pray. Dear Lord, we'd like to thank you for this day that you've given to us. We'd like to thank you for the opportunity that we have to join together as a community and talk about our business and keep you in mind in our decisions with that business. We ask that you guide our thoughts and our words and just oversee this meeting, go with us through this day and this week, and forgive us of our many mistakes and our sins. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right. We're set to go. We have all of our Zoom people on as well. Go ahead and convene the Alamance County Planning Board meeting for January 2022. We will take on our organizational meeting at this time. We will take nominations for chair.
Mr. Chairman and Madam, are you in that seat at the moment?
Mhm.
I nominate Todd for chair.
Second.
Any discussion?
Tanya,
Yes, sir.
quickly, before we have a vote, can we please have the board members who are participating remotely have their camera on?
So Stephen, if you can turn your camera on. Can we force it?
Just needs to verify that he's on.
Mhm.
We can see it, but he needs to answer.
Stephen, can you hear us?
He's unmuted.
Yes, Tanya, I can.
We can't have his camera on.
At the moment, I only have audio. I do not have a camera at the moment, just a microphone.
Is that okay? Patrick, are we okay with that?
Is his vote needed for quorum?
No.
No, it should be fine then until we can get a camera.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a nomination for Ray. Do we have any discussion? All right. So we'll take a vote. Those on Zoom, if you could just, if you are nay and say your name when you vote. So we'll take the vote. Everyone in favor, say aye. Anybody nay? All right, Mr. Cobb, you are chair and take the meeting away.
All right, we have a nomination for vice chair, please.
I nominate Rodney.
I second that. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? You don't count. Right. Has everyone had an opportunity to look over the minutes?
There are no minutes tonight, Mr. Cobb.
Also,
Can you throw the agenda up there? So we're, should move straight into our calendar at this point.
all right, everybody have an opportunity to take a look at it?
This is very structured this year. We don't have any change of dates on our calendar this year, which is unusual. So we are going straight for the original dates that our meetings are customarily scheduled.
I move we accept the presented calendar.
Second. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? All right. Ms. Tiny, how are we looking on public comments?
Let me go grab a sheet, Mr. Ray.
All right, Mr. John Link. Can I wait the last? If you want to, it'll be fine. I go. Sure.
Yes, please give your name and address when you come to the podium.
My name is Mike Owens. I live in Snow Camp. You want my physical address?
Yes, sir.
4716 Green Hill Road, Snow Camp.
Perfect. Thank you.
Let me start off saying real quickly, I appreciate all the board members. I know you don't get paid to be up here, and especially on problems like you're gonna be facing tonight, but I hope you all serving for the right reason. That being said, I'd like to start out by telling a little short story, and it's going to lead to a PowerPoint I'm gonna try to make, and it is this. 70% of small businesses, you can look this up, are started at home. Look at the guy who started Amazon, started at home. Now, there's a commissioner here tonight, I'm not gonna call the name, whose father has passed away. Great guy, smart businessman, successful. He was working for a company and he wanted to start his own business. And guess what? He didn't have the money to really do it, go uptown. So what he did was he started it on his little small piece of land that is still there today. Started with one building. Next thing I know, built another building. He built another building, 3 buildings. Now, some people that's for zoning would say, oh, he's devaluing the property. He's hurting all the landowners around him. Well, guess what? This fellow died not so long ago. And before he died, he had retired and he sold 2 of his buildings. One to a concrete manufacturer who makes concrete and makes caskets. The other business is a pavement company. But that's not the point, the only point I'm trying to make. The point I'm making is right beside this property, they sold a farm. I couldn't afford to buy it. They developed it. The price, the person who sold it brought way more money for land development. Now, these arguments that say, hey, it hurts the value. No, it did not. These people's got to drive within feet of these 3 buildings every day, in and out, one way in, one way out. They just sold a house, a buddy of mine sold a house in there just the other day. He doubled his price for it. Now, the point I'm making is, 2, my friend who didn't have the money to go uptown and start a business, started at home. If it had been zoning, chances are they'd have said, no, you can't do that. Sorry. So you heard his right to pursue happiness. You heard his right to provide for his family because somebody else says, hey, we make the decisions on what you do with your property. That's not right. Another thing, if people want to talk about protection for the farmer, I farm, I don't need y'all's protection. I don't need none of it. The state already provides some protection for farmers, but the bottom line is, if I want to choose to sell my land, I should be able to sell it to who I want to for the most money. So it would help my family, generations down the road. And if I decide, that, hey, I want to make sure my kids don't blunder my farm, I'm gonna put it in land conservation. Guess what? It's protected. I made that decision, not y'all, not somebody sitting in ground behind some desk, not the county commissioners. Mike Owens made that decision. It's out there. As a matter of fact, if you're a buyer and the seller can get tax benefits for land conservation. So we don't need no more zone. We don't need no more ordinances. The people who wants protection should live in town. The people who want protection live in a subdivision. Not come out here and buy an acre lot, which I'm not belittling that, and then tell me what to do with my 200 acres. That ain't right. And I'll tell you something else. I talked to the biggest land developer in this county this week. He builds houses. And you know what he told me? He said, Mike, if they double the lot size, if they make me put more green space, if they make me do this or that, I'm not going to pay for it. The consumer's going to pay for it. And who's that hurt? That hurts the average person, the little guy. You're putting your foot on him. And all these people say, oh, we need to help the little person. You're not helping them by doing that. You're making it more difficult. We do not need zoning. I can't tell you that enough. We do not need it. I appreciate your time. Oh, one more thing. Pure State, right down here on the interstate. You know how big that company is? Boys, a lot of people, hundreds, started at his house. Look up the facts, 70%.
Thank you, Mr. Wood. I'm going to accept responsibility for this. As many people we have signed up to speak tonight, we'll have a 3-minute time limit.
I got tired, Mr. Kyle, thank you.
That's okay. Roger Owens.
I'll wait till later.
All right. Sylvia T.
Oh, I'm not really going to talk. I
All right.
think I can answer that.
This looks like he looks like Joyce.
That's me, and he said everything that's going to say.
All right.
Yeah.
Todd Sheffield.
Schaefer.
No, I'm not going, I just signed the book, but I'm not going to speak.
All right, thanks, sir. Wendy. I can't
Has
remember.
some thought.
There you go.
I'm not gonna speak at this time. thank you.
All right. We'll close public comments. Opportunity. Fritz. I'm so miss you, sir.
Go ahead and say the last name.
Oh, she already told me. That's fine. She did a fine job.
I am Fritz Hessenthal. I'll talk just for a second.
All right.
Thank you very much, sir, first of all. I appreciate that. My family came here in 1985. The reason we came to this certain spot I live in, Liberty, North Carolina, is my address. We were living something better for ourselves. My father was. And obviously part of that was deciding what we do with our own land that we actually have. Whether that's farm, which we've been doing for 35 years. Whether I wanted to service a car, charge somebody money for it, whatever it was. And I certainly hope that's the way it stays. Like I said, I heard somebody say they agree 100% with that, man.
Thank you, sir.
No, sir. I thank y'all for listening to me today. I come here to talk about the recommendation y'all made last meeting about the RV, the mobile home stuff. We went back looking at sites, even with the reduced spacing that was put on there. You're not gonna find it unless you go way down into the county to build anything to scale to make it worthwhile. Stuff here we found none. This here, the ordinance going to impact land value. My company has, and the other companies have that we've talked to. We've talked to a couple of bigger players. And it's going to stop. It's about protecting the community from a perceived threat of safety and value. We're going to be presenting, not tonight. We have to be at the county commissioners meeting unless something changes between now and then. That mobile home parks don't. You can look at sales, you can pull comps, you can click around in these neighborhoods. Properly managed facility don't affect the value because they sell for as much is what I had found. And as far as the 1,000-foot screening from schools and churches, I believe it was what was left. They built a new high school across the road from Mr. Oliver's place. Apparently the powers to be there, it wasn't an issue. Like I said, they built it. Anybody see where the new high school is at on 119? It's across the road from Oliver Mobile Home Park, which is the second largest park, I believe, in the county. My residents don't deserve to be treated like they are a pawn shop or second-class citizens, be pushed away from public water, public utilities. And that's what you're looking at with your space, and you're gonna have to push them way on out because they live in a trailer or they're driving through town for business. They just simply don't deserve that. They don't deserve to be isolated from everything, wrapped up. I mean, I don't see the threat. I don't feel several things was taken into consideration for this, like the impact on affordable housing in the area. If we've noticed, apartment rents, guys, the impact on the existing land that is mobile home parks and the expansion on them. There's a lot of folks with parks. There's a lot of folks with parks that needs to be controlled. I agree on this industry. There needs to be a little more, hey fellas, you need to clean this mess up. There is a lot of that in the county. We bought one park like that and we cleaned it out immediately. We have another one we're looking at. Impact on land values and companies like mine. Impact on people when they're told they can't live across the town because they live in a trailer. You got to be wrapped up, wrapped down, covered up, and pushed 500 feet away. even with the 450 and the 50, you're telling these folks they gotta be 500 feet away from the dude over here in the brick house. And I don't see that being cool. Neighboring counties don't have these type rules. Neighboring counties allow parks. I heard it said in the meeting that we're the only ones that do this. No, we're not. I mean, folks had to go down to Duplin County to find these 1,000-foot separations. You're not gonna find them in the neighboring counties. I pulled them up. I haven't found them. If somebody else finds them, show them. I'm here today to ask, is there any way or interest in the board to relook at this thing? To put it back, I mean, it might not be a way the structure, I don't know the legal structure in council, you know, going up to the hierarchy. To relook at this thing before it gets to be a full-blown, you know, battle at a higher level. And because that's where it's going. And it's not just me, there's other developers that's interested in this. That's the question I have. I'm pretty much done. I have a one-sheet handout here. If the board is interested, I brought it. If I can give it to you or not, you tell me. Sure. It has to do with the
I'll take them, sir.
with legislation. Has to do with legislation North Carolina has passed, telling municipalities, hey, the folks in manufactured housing aren't second-class citizens, and they're suggesting to them to say, hey, making rules so hard and so extensive that regulates them out is not legal. And that's I left it on the sheet there that it come from the state, so you can see it's legit. It's not something we pulled off some website. There you go. I'm done.
Thanks, sir. Back forward.
Max Morgan, 810 Trauma Hawkville Road, Mebane, North Carolina. I'm here to make public comment on last month's meeting, since we weren't able to make a comment after the public was shown the new rules. When this started in November, we talked to you and we were in favor of, y'all were in favor of helping the county come up with an ordinance to help business owners that kept submitting RV park plans for mobile home park plans. And y'all were in favor of helping us out, I thought. And you suggested the complete opposite to the commissioners. You suggested extremely strict land spacing rules on all new parks, made all old parks non-conforming, which would essentially make it impossible to complete an unfinished park. This will leave large land masses inside of mobile home parks that have not been developed in between trailers. And there's some landlocked parcels around that also would only be conformed to for mobile home park additions or RV park additions. With this new proposal, land spacing rules will not be able to reasonably build any type of park, small, large, RV, mobile home. Even a small park would be essentially impossible to build and would require an extreme amount of land waste and ugly land chopping to make your rules conform. Mobile home parks and RV parks are what my family business is. And my goal has been and will be to continue to develop affordable housing in Alamance County like we've been doing for the past 35 years. People still will need affordable housing. This is not a dying breed. The US government loans out hundreds of millions of dollars to the private sectors to keep mobile home parks running and maintain core affordable housing. Even a 200-acre parcel in very rural areas of the county will not work. I've studied the GIS map for the past week, drawing lines, trying to build small parks on large pieces of land. It's essentially impossible without taking a 200-acre parcel of land and chopping it up and making it really ugly. Other counties that touch us do not have these strict rules. They make it where you're able to expand old parks as long as the new conforms and build parks without extreme land spacing. Their rules also allow RVs in mobile home parks and don't have any land spacing rules. People that need affordable housing need public water and county services near them. They shouldn't be placed in rural areas of the county where some won't even be able to get timely transportation for medical services, food, and any other type of services that are located in the cities of the county. The passing of these ordinances would do just that, since it is impossible to build a park in the county. We should not be pushing our elderly and lower working class away from other people and treat them as if they were second-class citizens. Veterans, disabled people, and people with special needs are all in our communities, and they should not be treated differently. Future growth of affordable housing for anyone who needs it won't be able to afford it in Alamance County. RV parks are needed because of the amount of people moving into this town. They will need a place to stay for a few months while they find a used house or wait for one to be built. We also need it for professional people coming into town that might stay for a week or 2 months and they go back to their big city where they came from. But that's all. I guess that was my time. Thank y'all.
Thanks, sir.
Can I ask the question?
Sure.
What's the status of that ordinance we voted on last month? Did the county commissioners take it up?
It has not been taken up for consideration yet. Tomorrow night or next week's meeting was going to be a request for public hearing for that ordinance. It's a first meeting in February. I have to get,
No, you said February. Freaked me out.
yeah, it is
I thought it was-
January, so,
Yeah.
um,
You have
As
to
fast
have
as
a
I-
public hearing before we can vote on it.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Gary, you with me?
Hello, my name's Gary Ulick. I live at 845 Soapstone Trail in Snow Camp. We talked a lot about the zoning ordinance and what the purpose is. And my understanding of a planning commission is to help to develop property in a way that's consistent with the neighborhood and the culture of those neighborhoods. I don't think anybody, and certainly me, is against somebody opening a business in their home. I don't think anybody's against how many mobile homes you can put on your lot, at least I'm not. But what I am against is the ability to drop a very intrusive heavy industry right next to my property without me having any input into that or any public opinion on that situation. The mine's a perfect example. The neighbors of that mine now, who many of them have spent and gone into debt trying to oppose it, are forced to live now with a stone crusher going 8 hours a day, dust in the air, and a variety of other noxious areas. Trucks going in and out on a rural area with no infrastructure to support that. You can't tell me that doesn't affect the property values. This is an argument that works both ways. I'm a libertarian. I'm not a big fan of government. But for you to do with your property, if that infringes on my rights and my property rights, then it is a problem. I'd like to see raise a hand. Who wants to live next to an asphalt plant? Anybody? I don't think so. So what I think we ought to be focusing on in terms of the zoning ordinance and future development is how do we protect the culture and agricultural and rural basis of our community from these intrusive heavy industries. I don't think that we should be concerned about whether people have green space, whether you open a business in your property, but I am concerned if somebody's going to put an asphalt plant right next to my house, and that forces me, and you can't tell me that won't negatively affect my property values. So that's what I want you all to consider. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Wolfie. Ron Spino.
Good evening, Ron Spinhoven, 2709 Quakenbush Road in Snow Camp. And I believe Tanya might have some information tonight on the subject. I wanted to open it up for discussion first. At the previous planning board meeting, I raised an alert to coal ash dumping as structural fill in open pit mines. Since then, my research has led me to raise the level to alarm. In 2015, permits were issued to Chara, the Kentucky corporation contracted by Duke Energy to relocate and fill open pit mines with coal ash. 2 sites were in Chatham County. After a series of appeals over 5 years, from both sides of this issue, the fate of these 2 sites is on hold for now Achara and the DEQ are moving forward with their plans for 6 other sites in the state slated for coal ash relocation. In addition to Duke Energy, Chara was awarded a large contract with Dominion Energy of Virginia in 2020 to remove and relocate coal ash. These permits are issued by the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, and since the sites are already operating permits, they do not go through a local permitting process. It is imperative that we prevent this dumping to occur in snow camp at any time after the quarry ceases to remove gravel for any reason. These fills would eventually leak into our surface and groundwater. We and Snow Camp do not want to go through more legal battles over our environmental protection, neither in the near nor the far future. As Mr. Chief said at the last meeting, we need to get out in front of this. We already know the Department of Environmental Quality won't protect our environment. It is up to us. So how does this get written into the Snow Camp zoning ordinance? I filed some information here for you. Some of it I have already emailed to the planning board. But there's a one sheet here that
Is it one for each or how this one?
no, it's there's a few. There's a lot of information here. I could sort it out. I sort of sorted it out. One of them is the actual comma section on the coal ash relocation, and one page alone talks about how the permit process does not require any other permits other than the Department of Environmental Quality, because they have already been permitted. So, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Oh, and one other thing. In here is also is I mentioned that I had put a petition out for, I did it on change.org for restricting all class 3 heavy industrial development in Snow Camp to be put into the proposed ordinance. And there's a petition there with about 167. As of this morning, there's apparently been more today too. I've taken out all the non-local signers on that. So it's all people from around here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pinelli. Great ups.
First of all, I just want to say that I understand what you're trying to do, and I understand helping people. I personally feel the same way, and I appreciate you listening to the citizens, the effort that you put in this already. But I'm going to read this because I like to talk, but this is going to keep me on track. Bear with me. So I'm Jay Doss, 1230 Walnut Grove Lane in Snow Camp. Was born and raised in Alamance County, the founder and the director of Living Free Ministries in Snow Camp. Been a resident in Snow Camp for a little over 11 years. And also been a licensed contractor here in the county for the last 20 years. I've got, in my mind, quite a bit of favorable history here in Alamance County, and experience with regulatory processes in various arenas. So I do have some concerns, and so thank you for letting us share. First of all, the general consensus is that the actual issue that we're facing is against or addressing class 3 industry in Snow Camp. I don't see how regulating and zoning a single but an entire community inside of the county is the answer. How do you tell one street in a subdivision that you don't have the same rights as the rest of the entire subdivision who all pay the same equal HOAs. If this were your street, I think it would matter greatly to you. And that's essentially what's happening here. It's not applying to the whole county, just one section of the county. We have the Unified Development Ordinance for the county, and I read it, it's good. But currently we have a couple of specific developments that is exposed, basically a gap that needs to be bridged. And I believe there's a more effective way to bridge that gap. I look in the draft, there's some really good things like, especially with like subdivisions and clusters, for example, but is it not a better idea? I mean, my question is it not possible just to amend the UDO with regards to class 3 industry? And if you got better ideas for land use and subdivisions, like I see with clusters and stuff, add that to it, but do it for the whole county. Zoning is not going to stop the rock quarry. The rock quarry is already there. Granted, it may deter the next group that wants to come in and start some big industry, but all they're going to do is go, what if they go to McRae or Union Ridge and buy a piece of land? You're going to be facing the same thing again out there. Hadn't done anything. We just solved it at one little place in Snow Camp. Second of all, growth requires change and change adaptability. To be completely vulnerable, everybody sees the need for and wants what we do at Living Free Ministries, but nobody wants it in their community or on their street. Today, who do our neighbors call when they got a problem or a life crisis? I don't tell you that to say that we're great or anything. All I'm trying to say is it's never quite as bad as you think it's going to be. And you can't stop growth. I mean, why would you want to? Everybody in this room, everybody in Alamance County wants gravel in their driveways and paved roads to drive on. Well, you got to have rock quarries to do that. I mean, where else do you want them if you can't go way out in Snow Camp and do one? I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm not lobbying for this quarry specifically or even class 3 industry, but I do realize the need that we have to accept growth. And so it takes development to support growth, and it's something that's always been a core value of this county and the effective leadership that we've had. I believe the zoning strategy directly opposes the very foundation that's made Alamance County a great county to live in. Lastly, third, who is going to administrate this gross additional responsibility? We're already spending county funds to outsource planning and inspections current responsibilities. It's concerning to me because I'm currently waiting, going on 8 months to obtain a building permit, a simple, basic building permit from the county. I've submitted everything that's been asked for and can't even get a response. 8 months. It started in May. We used to be able to walk into the inspections office and fill out an application and pull a permit for a new construction within 30 minutes from application to permit card. And it's just, the regulatory has made it, I mean, outstanding to just try to do anything. Imagine trying to rezone things like, and things for growth. So my question is, what's it going to be like if we add all of this additional regulatory process? And will we, as a ministry with a vision and goals for growth, will we ever be able to do that? It's zoned as an ag, we'll be considered agriculture, and there's no way that we'll get to do anything that we have envisioned to grow, and we need this. Like we're helping people for free. They don't pay anything to come out there. We're helping people and solving through a faith-based approach. We're seeing people's lives saved and families restored and things changing drastically in our community. We take inmates out of the jail for nothing and working with the judicial system to help them. And then people like our use is an issue out there. I don't understand that. And so I just don't see how that's gonna help us at all. I don't know how, this is a great idea. But anyway, I respect you guys. We're gonna do whatever you say we gotta do. But if this is adopted, this is a game changer for snow camp, for folks like us, other landowners. We're just one little piece. It's a game changer for Alamance County. So thank you for your time, though. Thank you, Mr. Dawson.
John Campbell.
Hello, everyone. I'm John Campbell. I'm at Dinnerbell Farm at 7565 Snow Camp Road, just down the way. First thing I want to say is nobody wants to be told what to do. Nobody likes that at all. And I want to say I sympathize with you and all that you're working on, that you have to make some decisions and all these conflicting different ideas people have. They want to do this or that, and you have to make some decisions. It's hard to do, and I appreciate your time and effort to do it. Thank you. We have some rights in this country and in this county, traditions that we hold dear. We have the right to property and to own and enjoy our property. We have the right to speak to our government, which is we're getting to do that right now. It's pretty good. And we have, along with those rights, we have responsibilities. One of the basic responsibilities is to be a good neighbor. We just had a prayer to our Lord Jesus Christ, and one of his statements was to be a good neighbor. I'm a believer, and I want to be a good neighbor. We have some ways to do this, of course, not to pollute our land or to pollute our water. That's one way I can be a good neighbor to my neighbor. It's not to pollute the water on my land, so I don't pollute the water on their land. Similarly, I don't make so much noise that it bothers them. I don't make so many lights that it bothers them. I don't make so much traffic that it bothers them. I have some responsibility to my neighbor to be a good neighbor. All right. Well, just because I want to do something doesn't necessarily on my property, because I enjoy my property, doesn't necessarily make it, in my opinion, my right to do that thing. We have to have some way to govern ourselves, some way to allow ourselves to be good neighbors. For instance, what I was thinking about doing on my property was putting in a bright orange snake pit. You know, the venomous snakes that they have out there, there's 1,000 different kinds, and you can get them and put them in a big pit, big snake pit, and have the venomous snakes. And I had the kids down from the Southern High, they would come down and they would help me be the workers and stuff. So we'd be an employment thing. We'd have a tourist attraction, people could come see the snakes. Now we have to feed the snakes, and you feed the snakes with rats. And we have 1,000 snakes, we need about 4,000 rats. So we'd have a rat barn on my property. So the snake pit would be next to the rat barn. And that's what I wanted to put together on my property. I'm sure that we could figure out a way to do this. And well, besides that, we have the motocross track. We'll go around the edge of the property, and we'd race on Wednesdays and Fridays. And then Saturday nights, we'd race under the lights. We jump over the snake pit, part of the appeal of it. Of course, I'm kidding. I'm being facetious about the whole thing. I can't just say I want to do something and then somehow have the right to do the thing. I have to be responsible to my neighbor. That's what we're about. But one of the troubles is that the heavy industry thing is not necessarily very responsible to its neighbor. It pollutes the water, it pollutes the air. They generally do that. And we say, well, the state of Carolina will help us by having environmental laws. Well, we know with this aggregate mine that came in, we know that the aggregate mine will pollute the water, the streams and the lakes downstream from the thing, but the Carolina system didn't stop them from putting it in place. The environmental rule isn't so much that it's going to protect the neighbors that live near the aggregate mine pit. It's hard to govern, and governing is something that we do because we collectively are here and we are neighbors. I say that we keep the restriction in place that we're talking about doing. It allows us to be good neighbors, and that we don't bring in people who are not accountable as neighbors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. John White. Good. All right. this time, I'd like to close public comment.
Can I-
I'm sorry. I forgot about that. Mr. Jones, I do apologize.
Well, I'll try to make it so where you don't have to set the chimes off on me. When I came in, the first thing I did was, Mr. Carter and I were speaking, and he was telling me that whatever my opposition to it was, that it could be tweaked and it could be adjusted to where it would be more agreeable to me. But the truth is, no matter what y'all do, and no matter how much you adjust it, it won't be agreeable to me, because many of these people, while y'all wasn't elected, many of the county commissioners were, and you were all, they were elected as conservative Republicans. And it used to be on one of the little cards that they hand out, they were for personal property rights and protected personal property rights and individual freedom and less government. And if y'all pass this thing, you're gonna be knocking out all three of those in one whack. And this other man said that it destroyed the property values around it. And I look around here, and where is the most valuable property in Alamance County right now? It's over there next to the rock quarry on Huffman Mill Road. You got the hospital right this side, you can almost hit it. You got the mall on the other side of it, the big shopping center. You got a school just built next to it. And any land you buy over there is gonna be higher than you pay anywhere else. But the truth is, I've got approximately 120 acres there on Cold Mill Road in Snow Camp. And there ain't 1 foot of it for sale. But if the time comes that I do sell it, I don't want my neighbors to tell me who I can sell it to or what I can get for it. And I certainly don't want my government telling me what I can do with it. I want to make that decision myself. And the next thing he informed me about was that this is just the beginning, that he wants to, that the rest of the county will be sold later, that he just wants to get this first. All right. We went through this several years ago, and the county was overwhelmingly against zoning Alamance County. And I'm sure that if it's put to a vote, it probably still would be now. But there's nothing you could do to it that would make me any more agreeable to it. In other words, I'm against more government, and I'm against more government regulations. And I've had some experience with property where I was taken in from city limits, is expanding their city limits on out. And I've had some real bad experiences with that. And no matter what you do, if the government's got their hands in it, it's going to be messed up a little more than what it was.
Thank you, Mr.
Can I come up and make a comment? Sure, have a speech. Sure. You know, with the heavy free industrial.
Could you introduce
I'm
yourself?
sorry, Todd Schaefer.
Okay.
I wanted to come up and talk about the heavy free, heavy industrial. You know, what it's going to do to the county. I think everybody lives there for the quality of life, and it's definitely going to change. I lived in South Carolina before the BMW plant came in. Once that plant came in, like we're talking about Toyota, remember coming down in Liberty right now. That all the suppliers and all that supply those are going to be looking for property and building. It puts traffic on the road. Go down to Greer, South Carolina, and you'll see how that area has just, now it's a standstill on 85 in the afternoon. I work with an environmental company, the largest in the United States, and we service a lot of these industries. And the reason I want to live in Snow Camp is because, you know, the quality of life. And when you start putting industrial, you know, in, like I said, the Toyota plant coming and all the suppliers and different, you know, they want to build plants close to there to supply it. It's going to put more traffic on the road. And also, I live up in Virginia. I transferred around with the company a couple of times. We lived up in Virginia, a mile away from the rock quarry. And you heard your house shake when they detonate dynamite. And that, you know, you'll be working out in the yard and you know, all of a sudden you'll hear it's like a small tremor. So, and also, like I said, from the environmental aspect of it, you know, you have, like I said, your trucks on the road, you have the environmental pollution, the rain, and also somebody brought up, it was good about the ash ponds. You know, that's all kinds of various toxic metals that contaminate. So I just want to come up and say, you know, with preserving the quality of life, you know, we got to consider the Toyota plant coming in, the proximity of snow camp to that, when we look for property. So thank you for your time and listening to me.
Thank you, sir. At this time, I would like to close. public comment. All right, Ms. Tony.
We're moving on to commissioner response to public comment. Any of you all that want to respond?
You know, I was gonna say something.
Ready to take that?
I appreciate everybody coming. It's nice to hear Paul Harvey used to say the other story, the rest of the story, the other side. Because when all this was put together, there was one side here going at it pretty hard.
Well, I gotta say something.
Nope,
No, listen,
nope,
we cannot contact any one of
excuse me,
these people.
please.
Can I get in touch with them?
You're not supposed to be speaking.
I know, I'm just telling facts. We
I don't
would be
care.
hearing more from people if we could have contacted y'all. Your name's on the board, but there's no contact information. That's not right. How can y'all represent your communities if we cannot call you? That is not right, sir.
Well, first off, I have an Alamance County email address. And if you would have sat there and this is our time to speak, you've had your time to speak, I was going to agree with you. So I don't know what you're jumping down my throat for, because the last time the people were here from Snow Camp, they said I was going to poison their grandkids.
I'm not jumping on you particularly. I'm just saying.
You're not
we should
supposed
get
to be
in touch, y'all.
speaking. And I'm one of the nice ones. But thank y'all for coming. I apologize for my, I don't like when somebody wants to interrupt me to tell me what I'm saying before I say it. So thank y'all for your time.
Okay, I'm chair of the Alamance County Commissioners. And I want everybody to know I'm a non-voting member on this board. I'm an ex officio member. So I'm technically a member of this board, but I am not a voting member of this board. So whatever happens today to this board, I'm not part of that vote at all. As a commissioner, though, their recommendation to our board will be considered, and I will have a vote as a commissioner. So will Mr. Carter and Ms. Thompson, who are also commissioners here at this hearing. So just want you guys to know, and I use the term guys, that does not mean male or female. Sorry about that. I want everybody to know that we eventually will have that vote with the 5 county commissioners, but I will not have a vote tonight. Additionally, we're talking about all kinds of heavy industry and whatever, and the heavy industrial ordinance is already in place. So that's already here and in place and so forth. And things like asphalt plants and so forth are directly affected by that heavy industrial ordinance that's already in place. So I would just encourage, and all of that's online. So if you go to the Alamance County site and then pull down departments and then go to planning, any of this information that you want to see and read is all there. So it's readily available. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Page. Any other planning board members?
Yes.
Ms. Folk.
Yes.
A lot of good comments tonight, no doubt about it, but came up with some good concerns that they have on both sides of the fence. I think that what organization tried to put together was was about protection, but it's not necessarily amount of protection as it is conservation area that a lot of us call home. Yes. Agriculture is a big section of our county. Yes, we have an entrepreneurial spirit that was brought up last Wednesday's meeting at the school now. Now Alamance County and the Snow Camp area has an entrepreneurial spirit, right? So there's a lot of good comments. I guess when this first started 3 years ago, a lot of people haven't been living for 3 years plus. 2018 is when this started, October 2018. Right? Yep, a lot of people don't have the ability to communicate on a daily basis. Basically. They don't have maybe a computer savvy. I understand that too. This started with heavy industrial. I was part of a steering committee that addressed a lot of concerns for our area and other parts of the county. There's growth and pressures coming from not only Liberty, but from Siler City, the NC Carolina Court. I've spoken many times about it. And there's growth pressures from the northern part of the county too. I think this was brought up initially to help with those growth pressures that are going to be coming faster to the south than it is from the north right now. Okay. Yeah, heavy industrial, there was a survey put out as part of the survey about exemptions last year. That's where it all started, was the heavy industrial. Yes, there's a lot of stuff in there that initially, especially when this zoning came up from the drafts of the initial steering committee and from staff, that, yeah, it looked like it was Chapel Hill the second or something like that, right? And so I think the steering committee and the planning board, we tried to whittle that down, and there's probably some more areas that could be whittled down so it wouldn't impact everyday life that people are concerned about. I know when this first started coming up, made a comment, Jake, that we need, one of the big things was agriculture and home-based businesses. I think we've tried to address that. We've taken that concern, home-based businesses, okay? I think what the second part of this is, yes, the large scale residential. Nobody really wants to, you know, when you move out to an area, a rural section of the county, or rural section of any county in any state, that you want to have room to spread your wings, have your elbow, buy a few acres, and put a house, maybe run some cows, whatever the situation is. And that does, when that growth impacts, and especially what's going to come from the Liberty area, like Mr. Schaefer said, you have no idea what it's going to be like if you don't at least try to address those concerns. That maybe there's still a lot more conversation to be had, but you know, maybe we're not there yet. But I think between large scale residential, heavy industrial, and large scale commercial too. If anybody's been around Mebane lately, all right, not that we all need the jobs, believe me, I work in that industry. I work for a commercial builder. I've been in the residential building industry all my life. My family's been farming. They farm, you know, until people pass away, right? So I understand all those concerns. And I just want to say that maybe there's more work to be done, maybe there's not. We're supposed to tonight discuss whether we're going to take a vote and recommend this. We should, maybe we should. I don't know. I tell you, another interesting that Ron brought up was the coal ash issue. And never saw that come. Never saw that issue come. I don't know how that's going to affect, if that's even going to be a wide effect for us, but never saw that issue come. That's all. So,
Thanks, sir. Anyone else?
Well, before we move on, I do, and I am moving on. Everybody in this room probably knows what the term who knows where the bodies are buried means it comes a point when you can have all the information that you need, but you don't realize that you have it. Mike Owens just hit the nail on the head. People need to know. You need to know how to get in touch with folks. Mike called me the other morning. I called him back. We've not had a chance to sit down and talk, and for that, I'm sorry. I've got a family, I got to work. Like it's been pointed out, we don't get paid for this. And I just don't think it's right for me to stop my paying work and give up my time. I get 24 hours a day, just like everybody else in this room. But I have to prioritize, and I'm sorry. I wasn't snubbing you by not calling you back. This rock quarry over here was allowed to be for one reason. And that was, there was not a requirement at that time to tell anybody. Now, how did that slip through the cracks? Well, this is one of them times where it really doesn't matter. What's done's done. And we're gonna have to gather up and move on. We can't keep spinning around that same little mud puddle. We got to get past it. If the truth was told, this snow camp small area zone that we're talking about tonight, it was asked for by some of the people in snow camp. And this very board sat right here and said, you got everybody in snow camp together and put it on a ballot and had a yes or no vote, there wouldn't be zoning snow camp. And we have heard tonight that the consensus of the snow camp community, and it doesn't come over as far as we are. Your mail comes through the post office, but you wouldn't be affected by this. It comes to Bethel South Fork Road. So I said at this table 10 years ago, 12 years ago, or a long time ago, and said, if zoning in Alamance County was put on a ballot, it would be voted down. But if we'll just wait, there'll come a point when there'll be enough people here who either don't know or don't care to where it will be voted in. And when I come here in 2005, as I was saying, I would have been the most staunch opponent of zoning that has been, because I'd always been taught that zoning is a bad word. But when I think about Randolph County and Chatham County and these potential mega sites, and here sits Alamance County with basically open arms to say, y'all do what you want to do. It's going to be just like the rock quarry. Now, I'm not sitting here tonight saying I'm in favor of zoning. Don't hear that. I don't want nobody in this room to hear. I don't want nobody in the virtual world to hear, because I'm not prepared to say that tonight. But I think it is right that just like at coal ash, we get ahead of this before we find ourselves just like with rock quarry. And the main thing that needs to happen is to let folks know what's going on. And what's the method for doing that? Above my pay grade. I'm not the public information officer, but if people know what's going on, and it's kind of sad that we spend as much time as we spend, and I and Sandy Graves and Lee Isley, who's also from Snow Camp and just rotated off this board, we sat on a subcommittee to do some work. And of course, there are people in this room who sat on a subcommittee for Snow Camp. Now, this is extra in addition to what we're not getting paid for now. But You get all this work done. And then you bring the people in and have a conversation and say, well, you messed up on this. I don't want that here. Which is wrong. What do you think about it? So this is just one person's perspective, but I'm agreeing with Mike. We need to know what's going on. We need a better method of getting information. And I sympathize with the other side of, I don't want a rock quarry in my backyard. I don't want an asphalt plant in my carport. I don't want a concrete mixing facility in the basement of my house. I get all that. But I also don't want 10,000 houses in my backyard either. So we got to find some middle ground in here. Government's job. Where's Mr. Carter? He's over there too. Government's job is to do the most good
right here.
is to do the most good for the most people, the most of the time. Because anybody that thinks you're gonna get it all right all the time, one, ain't never been married. And two, ain't never served the public in any capacity. I'm done.
Well said.
You did a whole lot. Anybody else have anything they want to say?
I mean, I agree with Rodney. I mean, there's two sides to this thing. I mean, I just have a hard time. I think, you know, like, I agree with what you're saying about, you know, it's not communicating. But I mean, how do you communicate it? I mean, you put ads on Facebook, you sent flyers.
Mhm.
You know, the other night at the schoolhouse, there should have been, you shouldn't have been able to stir.
Right, 3,500 flyers.
Right. And, you know, I mean, just how do you get people more involved? I mean, I don't know what the solution to some of that is to do that. But I mean, I really don't. You know, I have a problem with telling a man how he can, or telling a family how they can, you know, use their land that they've been on for years and years and years. And, you know, I know change comes and it's something on the old school side sometimes. I don't always agree with some change. But so I understand where you come from, and I appreciate everybody coming out tonight. Because I mean, like I said, it's good to hear every side of the story.
Just telling you before that public meeting the other week, how many notifications did you send out?
Announcing the public meeting,
Yes,
there
ma'am.
were 3,500 invitations.
So it was 3,500 invitations.
How many
sent out.
people were there?
60.
So there was less than 2%.
You know, we sent flyers out to every property owner in the Snow Camp small area.
I will have to say though, there were some pretty big landowners there at that meeting. I mean, some of the ones that were there.
Well, if you're inside that area and you want 2,000 acres of land, you're gonna get one flyer.
That's right.
And if
Yeah, we
you're
did
inside
consolidate.
that area and your actual dwelling meets the minimum health department requirements, and you live on 30,000 square feet of dirt, which is less than 2/3 of an acre, you're gonna get one flyer. So of the total flyers that was sent out, there was less than 2%.
Right, because when we saw duplicate names, our computer system, of course, cleaned that up, so we didn't send, with no intention, we didn't send people more than one flyer if they own more than one piece of property.
Right.
I'm not disputing what you guys are talking about as far as the notification part. But if you send out 3,500.
Oh, that's all you can do.
I mean, obviously, she sent that genuine invitation out, and I mean, less than 2% showed up. I mean, you're talking 60 people out of 3,500. I mean, it's simple to me that a whole lot of people had been down, well, I'm not gonna show, we'll let Bobby take care of it. I'm not gonna show up, I'll let Mary Jane take care of it. I'm not, you know, I mean, we even had Miss Sandy over here. She reached out to the school system, and instead of being at the fire department that could have handled 60 people, she reached out and the school system was very well generous enough to donate Sylvan Elementary School for this particular function. So in defense of the planning department, Miss Tanya did everything she could have possibly done outside of airplane flying around with banner coming off the back of trying to get you to go over here.
No, the next step is when you go to everybody's house and knock on the door and say, Mr. Paisley, I'm Rodney Cheek, I'm with the planning department. I guess you know that we're gonna have a meeting next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock up here at the school, and we're gonna be talking about your property. We want you to be there.
Now, what was your statement about time and payment? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's the whole point. And let me, you know what, I ain't done. Right, I got my second win. We gonna go some more.
Ronnie, that was supposed to be funny. I'm sorry.
Oh, it was hysterical. But I got a 3-year-old, so I know how to keep straight face. I'm just practicing on you. We are not talking bad about the county, and we're certainly not talking bad about Tanya. So if it sounded like that Rodney was telling the group that you derelict in your responsibility, he wasn't. If it sounded that way, that wasn't intended. Okay, well, good. And that wasn't supposed to be funny. That's very serious.
You good for a second one?
I'm gonna stop again.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, I just want to put that out there because I fully understand everybody's concern. If Ms. Tanya says she sent out 3,500 notifications, she did. All right, at the same time, and I didn't do this earlier, and I apologize for that. We do have John Payton, we do have Pamela Thompson, we do have Stephen Carter here tonight. All three are duly elected county commissioners. They're compassionate enough and they're concerned enough about what's going on. I'm so sorry.
Just hide behind it.
No need to hide behind it. No need to hide. So we have county commissioners up here tonight that came out of interest as to see what's going on. They wanted to hear what the public had to say. So, you know, they're doing their part. All right. As far as planning board members, and Mr. Cheek has spoken this out there a couple of times, we do serve for no pay. We're not paid, we're not compensated for this. We do it out of compassion for our county. We do it for our neighbors. We do it. That's what it's all about. So I fully understand everybody's concern. And Mr. Paisley touched on the HIDO ordinance earlier, but I do recollect because when that HIDO ordinance was being worked on, Mr. Poe, myself, and Lee Eisen, who you guys turned out and was taking his year off of vacation, in demand sometimes. We worked on that HIDO ordinance. And as far as a class 3 industry, just plop it down anywhere, whether it's in McCray, whether it's in Snow Camp, whether it's over in Eli Whitney or anywhere else, at this point in time, in current day, Alamance County, North Carolina, is not going to happen. They have to post that property. They have to post that their intentions are to put this there. They have to do that. You're going to see it when you leave a quickie mark going to the house. If you decide you're going to go, get your takeout order, you're going to see it. You will see this notification. That came up from work the subcommittee that was, the information was provided back to the planning board. It was sent off to the county commissioners. They massaged it a little bit to their liking and adopted it. It is currently in place now. So the chances of waking up next week and finding out that they're building an aircraft hangar over here off the side of the highway is not likely to happen, not in today's world. Thanks to the dedication of our county commissioners and the work and dedication put in by the planning department. Everybody's working hard for everybody's concerned. That's all I got to say about that. Now, Ms. Tanya, what you got?
Mr. Carter would like to speak.
Mr. Clark, please.
Thank you. My name's been bannered about a lot tonight. And I first ran for election in 2008. Right in the middle of the Snow Camp mine issue when it blew up. Board of Commissioners didn't know anything about it. Didn't have any chance to stop it. Didn't have any chance to help the folks down there that were dealing with it, the neighbors of it. So we dealt with that whole issue for almost 2 years. That was the result of what we tried to do was a heavy industrial development ordinance. That's all we could do. We're trying to protect you folks from something like that happening again. Now, I understand what Mike's talking about, what Roger's talking about. Freedom to do what you want to with your own property. And I heard a bunch of stuff at the school the other night that I really didn't like. Not from y'all, but details in some of the ordinance. Understand that the commissioners have got to decide what they're going to do. This board's got to propose what it thinks it needs to be done. We have to vote as we feel like we're led to vote. And we've got two groups on two different sides trying to tell us what they want. I'll tell you one thing I want more than anything at all, from all of them. That's your prayers. This is not easy. I can't count the calls. I know Pam sitting over here can't count the calls. Bill sitting over there, he can't count the calls he's gotten. Craig is online someplace. His two of his children come down with COVID. So he can't be here tonight. He was planning on being here. We want to do what's right for the citizens of Alamance County. I lived at Tea Party here for 12 years, haven't really stopped yet. I believe in everything Mike and Roger talk about. Personal property rights, less government. And that's what we're trying to do with the board of commissioners in Alamance County. So it's a balancing act of trying to come up with a plan that protects people from what they don't want. It gives people the ability to do what they do want. And it's not an easy balancing act. I know if you're on one side or the other, it can look simple, but it's not easy. I can't, everybody in here who knows me knows I've had this white hair for a long time, so I can't claim it all came about because of this. But there's a few extra white hairs in there that came about because of it. I appreciate everything everybody said. I've been listening, sitting over there and sitting over here. And I know John's been listening, Pam's been listening, Bill and Craig are all listening. We want to do what's right for the citizens of Alamance County. And you got a board that cares more about you folks. If you could hear the conversations we have, how much concern there is for the citizens of Alamance County on this board, you'd understand how we really care. And we really appreciate your support, and we definitely appreciate your input. But folks, when you see something like this board put out 3,500 notices and ask you to come to a meeting, how many meetings time have we had so far?
We had 2 in person, and we've pushed stuff through Facebook and online for 2 years.
So we've been doing this for a long time. If you get that flyer, take the time to come out the first time. And that's what these guys have been working with. And if you only get one side of it, you only see it going in one direction. Please help us do our jobs better for you. We want to hear from you. We want to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garrett.
Yes. All right, well, we went through a lot of public comments tonight. You all had the opportunity to respond to that. What we have now for you is a presentation a bit shorter than what we did last week. Anything from last week's presentation is online. Everything we've been putting out is online. I know that sometimes internet's an issue. Anybody can call us. We'll print off whatever I need. Just for reference tonight, we do have a full-size map. Should we need actually to look at a map? The actual language will go up on the screen after the presentation too for discussion. So we can keep everybody on the same page, literally. We've got Jake here from Stewart. He's got some responses to what we heard last week, some responses to what we've been here during this process. So we'll give it to him, let him do his presentation with y'all, and then we can continue discussions on where there are additional concerns and what tweaks we might need to look at.
Good evening. He's a real person, not just in a little box. Real. Thank y'all for having me. I think Ian will bring up the presentation. It's going to be a lot shorter version and presentation that I've given y'all in the past, but I wanted to hit some highlights of the ordinance, but also some things that we've been hearing and some adjustments that we've made already. And maybe some things that y'all need to discuss. Taking action tonight about while we move forward. So you feel like it's a lot of time, like
I'm trying to,
full screen maybe.
I'm trying to, sorry. I know there's a way in here to do it.
I think it's the these guys over here.
Yeah. Let's see this one, maybe that one. Access.
There we go.
Okay. Yeah, that'll do. That'll do.
Maybe zoom out.
Sure.
Well, that's fine. Just scroll down. This is what I want to talk about tonight. Overview, some highlights, public comments, some revisions made, and then next steps for Q&A. Have this discussion. So Tanya's provided an overview of kind of how we got here, but after the mine came up, there was the land development plan, and as part of that plan, we did do a small area plan for the snow camp area. We looked at issues, and what came out of that plan was a recommendation to manage growth and high impact uses differently. And in fact, part of the survey, we did get hundreds of responses, a lot of them from the snow camp area, and over 75% wanted some type of additional land use controls on high impact land uses. So that really is what goes down this road. And really what we kind of zeroed in on is we don't need a traditional zoning ordinance, but more extensive review and decision-making process. That's what was needed. It was not in place. It outlined some recommendations for land use regulations, also include looking at land use and property trade and that sort of thing to zero in on some issues. Go next slide. So after that small area plan, we started working on the draft ordinance. The goal again was to create a decision-making process. That was what was not in place before. Even with the HIDO, if you meet the standards, then there's no decision to approve certain types of uses. So we thought that decision-making process, to where it was a public process and the proper notification was important. So this created that framework for land use and development regulation in the snow camp area. We want to mitigate conflicts between potentially incompatible land uses, minimize negative impact on the natural environment. We also want to protect local character, aesthetics, and quality of life, and that includes kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, small businesses, and that sort of thing. But it's not really the focus of the ordinance, quite frankly. And we created a draft ordinance that is very unlike your typical ordinance in a city or town. And it's really focused on a few things, pretty flexible. But I can go over some of that. Go to the next slide. So the project schedule, just for the ordinance, that doesn't include the land development plan and small area plan. Before that, we started in April, had a number of steering committee meetings. There was a public workshop in September with online comments available, and we did advertisements on Facebook and elsewhere. And then the joint planning board commissioners meeting, the board workshop that we had. We're here at the planning board review and consideration of draft. We'll also talk about kind of what happens after this, but I wanted to kind of walk you through the overall process. Go to the next slide, man. One of the things that was important to the board when we were talking about drafting an ordinance was public input. So that was one of the things that we made sure it happened is we along the way, we tried to do the best to get people involved. This postcard that people got in the mail was a big part of that. Every landowner. And we did have the public workshop on 1/5. It was a pretty good turnout. Could have been more, but there was a good turnout. Keep going. And getting into kind of the draft. The next slide. Again, an overview establishes the decision-making process, gives planning board and board of commissioners a role in development approval, especially more intense development types like subdivisions, some commercial developments and industrial uses. It applies only to the greater Snow Camp area. There was a lot of discussion before we embarked on this about, should it be for the Snow Camp area, or should we try to, do something that's that covers more of the area of the county? And the decision was made to focus on Snow Camp, because that was the recommendation of the plan. If you did anything that was larger in different parts of the county, you really need to customize. The thought was you need to customize that process and any kind of regulations in those areas based on what you hear from the different areas. Okay, so we didn't want to extend these regulations anywhere else because we wanted to focus on Snow Camp. So for zoning districts, these with allowable uses, review and approval procedures, basic dimensional design requirements. Again, they're very basic. And transitional provisions and nonconformities that really provide some flexibility for a lot of existing uses. This will not really affect any existing uses in the study area in terms of non-residential uses. Anybody can any residential uses. Existing uses in the footprint are fine, rebuild and that sort of thing. The zoning districts, agricultural zoning district, focus on supporting agricultural and related uses, including residential and some business uses, and rural residential that's more for neighborhoods. Does have a rural cluster option that tries to be a better neighbor to agriculture and that sort of thing, clustering away from some uses. Rural business, which encourages small scale commercial uses, and will include most existing commercial businesses. And then the industrial district is perfect for industrial uses where performance standards are also met. Meaning it meets what was the HIDO, now is Article 6.5 of the ordinance. And some industrial, heavy industrial uses will require zoning and a special use permit in the draft ordinance as it's currently written. So it's a two-step process. It have to be rezoned, and then a special use permit will have to be granted. So there will be more decision-making notification required for that. Keep going there. So the draft zoning map as of 12/1, most of it is the agricultural area that is the darker green. So rural residential district is the lighter green, and then there's some rural businesses throughout where there's existing businesses primarily. There is an industrial district that honors existing industrial uses, like solar farm, quarry, sawmill, and that sort of thing. We did make a couple minor changes based on comments received during the workshop. You go down to the next slide. The frontage of the quarry that houses the office, and we recommended that comments was received that be included in the industrial district because it is part of the footprint. So we did make that extension. And then there's also a lab out in that area that is a biolab that has two buildings, one on the back and one on the front of the property, but it's very well buffered, and it seems to be appropriate to acknowledge that use. So that was a comment made that we changed that as well. So those are the two changes on the map. Keep going there. One thing that's important to know in this ordinance that farms are exempt from county zoning per state law. So we're none of these rules and regulations would really apply to bona fide farms. That's important. If they have a commercial business or if they have multiple dwellings or anything like that, that's not really going to factor in to agricultural uses. One thing that we are trying to do is mitigate potential impacts from heavy industry to existing working lands and also large scale residential. That's a concern. Next slide. This does set up different decision types for different types of uses. Administrative is kind of the easiest way to get a permit and get an approval. That's for some residential subdivisions that meets criteria based on the zoning district. That would not be required to go to the planning board or the board of commissioners. If you meet criteria for your district, whether it's agricultural or residential, one, that would just go to staff, and they would approve it. Legislative approval, which would require staff review, planning board recommendation, and then a legislative hearings, a public hearing, and approval by the board of commissioners with most rezonings. So that is, if I have agricultural parcel and I want to get rezoning for a large scale, more dense residential subdivision, then it would go to the planning board and board of commissioners. And also, is for some, if I want to go from residential to commercial, then that would also be the process. And there are a few approvals that were conditional rezonings too, where the planning board and board of commissioners could approve with some conditions to make that development or proposal be a better neighbor in some cases. So that's that. The quasi judicial process is probably the highest bar, I guess, for development approval. And that would require staff review and then evidentiary hearing by the board of adjustments or board of commissioners on how to do it. But that would be a special use permit. So in case for the heavy industrial uses, as class 3 uses, not all class 3 uses, but some of the more potentially heavy industrial uses, it would require a legislative rezoning and a quasi judicial approval process. For instance, there are some class 3 uses that are appropriate in rural areas, like sawmill, for instance, and those we are not recommending require that extra special use permit. So go to the next slide. So single family subdivisions, this is the draft ordinance, its requirements. 3 acres. The average lot parcel size in agricultural now is 11 acres. In R1 districts, have a maximum density of 1 unit per 2 acres and a lot size of 1.27 acres. This was not done haphazardly. This was based on a median lot size of 1.27 acres currently in the R1 district. So we're in line with what's existing out there. The cluster option would be kind of an incentive in the R1 district to where you could have the same number of lots as in the R1, but you could have a lot smaller lot size that can go from open space and some natural resources or some views or maybe adjacent to existing working land or that sort of thing. So that's that difference between a conventional subdivision where you come in and lot the whole property, have no open space or buffers, just the minimal amounts, and then there's a rural cluster subdivision that can fit a little bit better, we think, in a rural area. Keep in mind that we are not stopping residential development, and this is always a balance. And I mentioned that average lot sizes are a lot bigger. Average parcel sizes are a lot bigger in this area, and this is not stopping development. Given this current draft, there can still be 14,000 homes on vacant and agricultural parcels in Snow Camp. So there's plenty of room for development. This tries to do a job of balancing, some growth and development, but also protecting the character of the area. So that's what we're trying to do here. But of course, this could be adjusted. This could be something that the planning board or board of adjustment want to adjust in one way or another in order to make it more appropriate in those eyes. So keep on going. Single family subdivision, a couple key design requirements that we did put in here. One is the agricultural buffer. So new subdivisions greater than 3 lots would require a vegetative buffer adjacent to working lands or credit for preserved trees. But in a lot of cases, we can see that new subdivisions can actually impact agriculture. People start complaining about tractors or noise or dust or that sort of thing. In this case, new subdivisions might actually be the noxious use compared to agriculture that's been there for. Also, highway buffer. You do have some great rural roads down there and some views. So you have some pretty large subdivisions, even with these regulations. So you could have a situation where you have the backs of 60 homes backed up against a road, and this highway buffer just would soften that view a little bit with some screening. So I think pretty basic requirements for single family subdivision. There's some other ones, but those are some that I wanted to highlight. In the next one. And I just want to walk through that industrial rezoning and special use permit process a little bit. Say I have a parcel in my zoning designation is agricultural. And I want to rezone to an asphalt plant. It's the process I would go through. The next slide. We would, current draft of the ordinance at least requires a rezoning and a special use permit. Those class 3 industrial uses. But like I said, some class 3 uses do not require a special use permit, like sawmills, because they think they're appropriate in a rural area. Keep going there, yeah. And I wanted to go over a little bit changes that we made based on feedback. This was from feedback we received even before the public meeting. And there was a lot of people that tuned in to the joint meeting. So a lot of this feedback came in after the joint meeting. But we did add that conditional zoning process for certain uses for mobile home parks, campgrounds, and larger scale commercial, just to allow some more dialogue. The conditional zoning process is a really open process where you all can get public feedback and talk with the proposed development and get them to be on board with conditions that make that development more palatable to kind of mitigate some of the issues that we're seeing. But larger scale commercial was something that we heard was an issue. Small scale commercial is not really an issue. So there's not really a lot of regulations in there about large, small scale commercial, but anything over 10,000 square foot building, that's that linear between small scale and large scale. There's also a lot of allowances for home-based businesses too. It didn't go into a lot of detail here, but it make those even more flexible. We'll talk about that in a minute. We did add public notification procedures for legislative and quasi-judicial processes for those rezonings, and for the special use permit, there would be a lot of public notification required. We updated the table of permitted uses to match the HIDO classes of industrial uses, to make it easier to understand, and relaxed a lot of regulations on residential and commercial uses. And this is based on early input from a steering committee and also from other folks, where it's pretty flexible. Not really, those aren't really the target of it. Also double checks and cross references and that sort of thing. Go next one. And then we had the public workshop on the 5th, and we made some more changes. One thing that we heard was people like the idea of treating rural home occupations separately and providing flexibility, but they wanted us to be even more flexible. We talked through a couple of hypotheticals. In the R1 district, we increased the allowance for accessory structures and the rural home occupations, which are, you have to have at least 3 acres. We increased the accessory structures to 6,000 square feet. Trying to be really flexible there, increase the number of employees on a rural home occupation. We're modeling, looking at Chatham County and Cabarrus County as some examples. Again, these rural home occupations are part of the character of Snow Camp, and they're not really the focus of the ordinance, and we want to be as flexible as possible. Anything that's out there now doesn't have to get a permit too. That's another thing about the rural home occupation. If you're out there now, then you don't have to get a permit. If you're doing a significant expansion, then that would be an administrative approval. You would have to get an ordinance compliance permit, but that, again, that's not a rezoning. So it's the easiest permit to get, or easiest approval to get in this process. Another thing we heard was accessory dwelling units. There was a cap for accessory dwelling unit, which is another dwelling unit on a parcel, 50% of the principal structure, and it was suggested that we increase that to be more flexible. So we did that, changed it to 150% of the principal use, and changed the name to secondary dwelling, because we could see this a situation where you have an old farmhouse that's 1,000 square feet, but there's a new dwelling that wants to get built, and it's going to be a lot bigger than the initial farmhouse. So we did adjust that as well.
Can I ask a question right there?
Mm-hmm.
You can have 2 dwellings on the same piece of property with the same mailing address, the same everything.
No, you have a different mailing address for each unit. That's for 901 persons.
Okay. So I can put 10 houses on the same piece of property
Right now you can.
with different mailing addresses.
Yeah, we address them separately, but right now there is no limit on how many. I would say that, that's with the caveat, that that's from the planning side. When you get to the building inspection side, once you get over 2, push to 3, you start having some fire regulation you have to do.
And what we're saying in the draft ordinance, you could have 2, unless you're a bona fide farm. In that case, it's not regular. So you can have multiple, So, and
What's the definition of a bona fide farm?
there's 4 different ways to get it.
Well, I mean, I looked in the ordinance, there's no definition.
State
in the
law.
ordinance.
It's under
State law.
State law. Present use value designation is one. You receive certain amount of revenue from the farm. That's another. And there's a couple more ways to get it.
Okay. So that's fine, just want to know from your income tax.
You have a
They done away, there was 5, they eliminated one, and I think 2019.
Schedule.
And there's a lot of present use value property in the snow camp area. A lot of those agricultural lands are actually, they're getting present use value designation, so a lot of that would qualify as a bona fide farm. Just by default. Couple more things, auto services, it wasn't explicitly in the table of permitted uses, so we did add that. That's also allowed as a home-based business. Because we know there are some autos, repair services that are secondary uses out there. And we really don't want to cause any issue with it. So we wanted to add that as in the table of permitted uses, so it's permitted in districts, but also it's permitted in the home-based business option as well. Single family subdivision, that's something we heard from folks that own agricultural land. They were concerned about the lot size for family subdivision. So we did add a family subdivision option. This will require an adjustment in the UDO to allow for up to 2 new lots, so 30,000 square foot in size once every 2 years, similar to a minor subdivision approach. But we wanted to add some flexibility for those families that do have a different sort of situation. So that's in there. Updated definition of mobile homes. Just to clarify, this ordinance is not proposing any spacing or anything like that compared to mobile homes. That was a different proposal. And then there was revisions to the rural cluster development option to provide additional flexibility. This is again, we think a better way to design a subdivision area, so we want to incentivize it, so we actually reduce the minimum lot size, but not the overall density to encourage that. Next slide, Ian. Only 2 more, guys. One thing that y'all are going to need to kind of discuss is the heavy industrial uses. The current draft of the ordinance requires a rezoning and special use permit for most class 3 uses, including mining, racetracks, asphalt plants, and paper mills. We think that this is an enhanced decision-making process. It makes it clear and raises the bar. But there is an alternative, would be to change the table of permitted uses and not permit certain uses in the center camp area. And there was significant support expressed for that option at the public meeting. However, steering committee members were split on how to approach this. That's something that you all would have to discuss, and eventually the board of commissioners would have to make a decision on one way or another. But that's where that is. We have heard additional feedback on a number of other topics, but we didn't make any yet. One is water quality, tree preservation. We heard that there was a need for additional protection here. We think that again, encouraging that rural cluster option will actually incentivize protection of some open space, especially along the creeks and those things that will improve water quality in the long run. So we think we're using like an incentivizing approach as opposed to a regulatory approach, which will help there. We did hear some concerns over coal ash storage and quarries. And I think that this process in the draft ordinance still makes that harder to happen, because the process for approving a quarry would have to go through a couple different steps. So that's important to say. We need to clarify greenhouses, really commercial greenhouses versus accessory uses. The goal is not to not allow greenhouses out back as an accessory use, or in certain areas large scale commercial greenhouses should go in the agricultural area, not in residential areas. So we weren't really trying to say that greenhouses can't be an accessory use. You have a greenhouse up to 1,500 square foot or in the residential district, and if it's a rural home occupation over 3 acres, it can be up to 6,000 square foot and not be an issue. Solar panels, there was a comment on more flexibility on residential parcels. I think it's pretty flexible right now. It allows for solar panels as much as you need, plus 25% to power the principal structure, and small scale hydro and windmills and stuff like that aren't really regulated. So I think, related to small scale alternative energy, it's not really too stringent, and then large scale energy production facilities would have to meet other performance-based criteria. So those are just some things that we're hearing and up for discussion. And you all can really kind of talk about next steps. The goal is to get it here to you all, and y'all have discussion, and then have to answer questions and figure out where it goes after this.
Just want to reiterate, I know we've got people online watching tonight. We've had a lot of emails come in after we sent the board's agenda out. The board does have copies of those emails. I know we've had some last one out there this afternoon. I believe all the copies in the emails have already been covered by Jake during the presentation. We heard a lot of similar things, so you probably won't see a full list because we heard a lot of similar things from people. Tonight, I think we want to talk about, we've got a draft, we've been to public workshop, got some information from that. We've made some changes to the draft because of that. From here, what will be best for us to help you all with the ordinance? Where do y'all see a need for changes? What would y'all want us to work on? Y'all heard a lot here tonight too. Some of y'all were at the workshops.
Sure. So, Jake, I think when we did the public workshop over there at the school, I asked about explaining and expanding on where this potential overlay ordinance, it picks up from the existing UDO, right? And a lot of people don't understand that. Could you explain that a little bit and bring that up to this crowd a little bit?
Right. So, those class 3 uses would have to meet all the criteria that's outlined in section 6.5. So the spacing requirements, the buffer requirements, and all that. So this just adds a decision-making process, an approval process that is not an administrative approval for those uses. All that is kind of baked into this. This adds the approval process.
So the bottom line is that a lot of this stuff is already in existence. A lot of this stuff is not new. The UDO and the 6.5, that is nothing new. We have a residential subdivision ordinance. That's nothing new. This just massages it a little bit to keep more rural character. That was the intent. There's already a lot of these things.
But just in the snow camp.
That's right. And I think that came up pretty much using snow camp as a guinea pig, right? We had those many discussions about doing it for the whole county. That didn't get approved as far as the dollars or the time. So that was restrictions there.
I'm gonna reach out to a couple. I'm gonna ask a question, and Jake, I want you to help me out with this, okay? Just one. You currently run a trucking company outside of Spokane, correct? How many trucks do you have? 14. 14 trucks. How many employees do you have, sir? I mean, on average.
On average, probably 12.
12 employees that show up at your place most days, go to work. make a
Well,
paycheck.
the days are not on the road yet.
I get you. I really understand that. So in all honesty, you run a business, but you're also providing a service because the people who live within the snow camp community that do work for you,
Absolutely.
that can make the money to go to food line, pay for truck payment on the pickup and drive to work, groceries. Maybe bill and, or maybe pay to put solar panels on the roof of their house. Is that a fair statement?
I think
Jake, how's this snow camp zoning ordinance gonna affect Mr. Link and his business? He's already got 14 people on payroll now. What's it gonna do to affect him?
Well, it won't affect his current operation in any capacity.
Current operation?
And if he wants to expand, is he on a bona fide farm or is it on a separate parcel?
How many, you operate on the county farm, correct? How many acres in that tract land? 75.
So anything on a bona fide farm really is not factored in with this ordinance because it's exempt from zoning.
Even though it's not a farm operation?
I mean, if it's on a bona fide farm, the zoning ordinance doesn't kick in. If it was on a separate, if it was on another parcel, and it didn't have a bona fide farm status, if you were to expand, then a rezoning might be required.
So that's the question. Is your, where you have your trucking company by the state of North Carolina, is it considered a bona fide farm? Not what it
The
used to
trucking
be.
company is not.
Okay.
Now, what other operations going on there is a bona fide farm because I do file schedule it up on my income tax.
Okay.
But there's two operations going on there. So, I mean, that's kind of like your home-based business.
Yeah.
I'm a farmer over here, but I've also got an IT company over here.
Yeah.
It's a gray area.
And that, those types of uses, we could put in the RB district to begin, and then it would be fine. Or we put in an industrial district, that'd be fine. And it wouldn't require zoning after that. But in this particular case, it's not an issue because it's a bona fide farm.
The biggest reason I wanted to do that is I did ask, he says that he's got 14 trucks, he's got 12 employees, I'm assuming a secretary, office staff, things that way. I'm not saying I'm for zoning, I'm not saying I'm anti-zoning. But if it's anything that's going to affect Mr. Link's business.
Well, I'm not doing business in the area that where you're going with this.
And I'm bringing you back simply because I know who you are, that's it. Right, you got Mr. Owens over here, I'm assuming he's involved in ag business. You got Mr. Help me out here. Kerry, what's your husband's name? Okay, we got another Mr. Owens over here, you a farmer yourself, correct?
That, and I also work for the planning department in Orange County. So
God
I'm very
bless.
familiar with a lot of this, and that's what I was wanting to say.
Right.
The term bona fide farm is being used as a catch-all to, hey, you're exempt from everything. But from my understanding in the interpretation Orange County uses, only, and that's given by the state law, bona fide farm only applies to the activities for the bona fide farm. So in the case of Mr. Link, he may have 500 acres that he raises cattle on, and that is bona fide farm, but his 10 acres over here, that's a trucking company for the truck parking, office, truck storage, and mechanic shop that's primarily for his trucks, that would not be exempt from bona fide, because that's not bona fide farm. Just because his whole property is consumed of it, it's the activity as well.
I'm with you there, and I understand the state does have a definition of bona fide farmer, but in my opinion, if you're not riding a combine, if you ain't chasing pigs and cows and things of that nature, if you don't horse like have a farmer stand, you're not a bona fide farmer.
Correct, and there's very distinct definitions that you have to meet, and it's not as easy as just saying, I have 400 acres and I want 50 cows. That does not make you a bona fide farm. You have to meet one of the very clear, specific definitions. And from a planning perspective, then I assume Alamance County would have to go down this path because of state law. That has to be proven as an applicant, and I use the word applicant, if I decided, or if Mr. Link said, and I don't even know Mr. Link, if he said he wants to expand his shop because he's gonna take home 14 more trucks, then he would have to go through a very rich process to be able to do that.
So that's what we were saying. The business side is one thing, the farm side is another. He is being recognized. There are 4 ways by state law to be recognized for farm. That has already been recognized in Alamance County, specifically in the building inspections department, very little in planning, because we don't have a lot of those ordinances that would apply. But for Mr. Link, that is true. We need to look at the business and then look at the farm, because they are looked at above all separately.
Well, the biggest reason I wanted to know is just, how long have you been doing this? How long have you been in the truck business? Since 1993.
We just started.
I just started when it was 12.
So the intent is not to affect that. So this order.
I understand.
But if he grows.
But if he grows, then all of a sudden.
Depends
he's
on what
falling-
zoning district you put on.
Well, so we're gonna go through snow camp and go, you're this. you're
We already
this,
have.
you're
That's
this.
what that map's for, and that map's
If I
addressed.
add on to my shop at my tires, what is my policy and procedure that I have to do if I build another bay?
I think yours on the RV, I think you did that as RV because it's traditional business and so I think you're good as long as you put it, I think we split zone your property to where the back end of it was ag and the front end was commercial. So as long as it's within that commercial area, you're good to go. And if you wanted to expand in the back, then, you know, it would be a rezoning for that back area.
So there's no, other than pulling a building permit and the proper permits. there's
I mean,
nothing
if you're,
else I
if you're
have to do.
zoned appropriately, that's it. And I mean, you know, and Mr. Link, I mean, I think that this, what we wanted to do is talk to Lena and see what their, you know, preference is, because if there is plans for expansion, then you might want to go RV, but there are also some potential drawbacks to go into the rural business district, because then, you know, you do have a certain set of, benefits of that, because that might factor in your taxes. You know, it could, you know, potentially increase your taxes because you could get, your appraisal could be higher because you could do more things on your land. So, I mean, I think that's where we are right now is you know, if there are businesses, we would rather probably, if there's plans for expansion, we would rather, you know, put them in the RV district if you all think it's appropriate. That kind of thing. It's a little bit different situation because, you know, it is such a big piece of land and it does have ag use, and it's not, you know, on the front of the property, it's, you know, you kind of are interior, so you're not really affecting anybody in your current operations. And, you know, that's why we put that minimum criteria on the home-based business, because a lot of people, you know, if he had the same amount of trucks and it was on a 2-acre property, then, you know, it might be a different story.
The concern I've heard about this topic has been not so much my business, but as a business already operating. If, I don't want to pick on Eric, but let's just say if Eric decides to add this bay, the new rules, what I've been told, now I've tried to read this through this thing 100 times, and every time I do, my phone rings, I gotta get the record, I gotta go through this, I got a truck driver, wife's mad or whatever. So I have not been able to read through this, and I was on the steering committee, so. But one of the biggest concerns I think I've heard in my area has been if Eric decided, and I'm picking on him, because he's the only business I can think of, if he decides to add a bay to his shop, that under the new ordinance, if he's got over 4 parking spaces, that y'all are gonna require him to pave his entire parking lot. Now, is that in fact a true statement? Because I'd like to nip that in the bud from the people that I've heard discussing this kind of thing, to say, no, that's not in there. And I know I could probably read through it if I stay up all night, not I probably will after this meeting tonight. But at the end of the day, that's been one of the things that a lot of people have brought to me because they knew I was on the steering committee and have asked me. And I said, well, I don't know. I got a couple people I need to ask to find out. Well, thanks, good night.
And right now, the ordinance doesn't directly address expansions like that, minor expansions.
Okay.
I think that the way the ordinance reads is if you have 10 spaces, you need to pave your lot, and there's some basic design requirements. But it doesn't address expansions currently. And there's a lot of different ways that you do that. You just not address it, right? Like it's not, you know, an issue unless it's a new use, or you could say, you know, it has to be over a certain percentage of investment or expansion of a building or something like that, where, you know, these things kick in. There's a lot of different ways you can treat that.
So this could be the beginning of the snowball.
And I think that's probably the biggest concern I hear, is the fear of the unknown. Where is this thing gonna go? And when people ask me, I said, you know, if I could predict the future, I wouldn't be in the trucking business. I promise.
That's right.
Or if there are pieces of that that, you know, are not needed, like if you want to strike that piece of the ordinance, we can make this thing smaller and shorter. So that's not a big deal.
I'm gonna jump in, and the reason I'm gonna do that is like I said earlier, I'm not gonna say I'm anti-zone, I'm not gonna say I'm pro-zone. But what I am gonna tell you is, out of 3,500 postcards that were sent out, we had less than 2% of people show up to a venue that were more than capable of taking care of that type of capacity, okay? We've got a zoning ordinance that everybody's worked on, and you yourself have done a great job. Thank you so much for your efforts. At the same time, we got a zoning ordinance that's getting ready to get the snow camp part of this county simply because we got we'll say some folks that's got a case of diaper rash over some industries that's come in snow camp. How do ordinance that was reworked to give out public notification to prevent that type of issue happening? Now we're talking about ordinance over here, and I'm throwing John Link in here again, and it ain't got nothing. I'm not singling them out, and I'm not lobbying. I'm just using him as an example. Now we got an ordinance over here that if he decides to put on 14 more trucks, if a person, I said a person, one decides he needs to pave his parking lot down there, guess what? Now he gets called APAC or somebody to come over there and pave his parking lot. Who's gonna pay for it? He's gonna pay for it. Man's been in business since '93. He's got 14 trucks, 12 people on his payroll. He's earned his stripes. For him to have to turn around, and I hate to say this because I expect somebody's going to lynch me over this, for him to be on 75 acres with a trucking company, because like I said, a case of diaper rash, you got somebody on a 2-acre tract of land over here is going to prevent him or cost him in his pocket his potential early retirement or work that efforts that he's put up to build his company. We got Eric over here. He's a member of the planning board. Yes, sir, he is, but I'm gonna use him too. Every time I come through Greensboro Chapel Hill Road, McIntyre's open for business. He's serving folks down there. So we got 2 companies that I know that are providing a service for snow camp. We need to throw yesterday's grill in there. Right?
Yeah, make her pay her parking lot.
If you don't want to- Well, this is recorded.
It is recorded.
Oh,
It's been right in my face before.
And I don't mean it ugly, but I like her cheap purchase down there, so she needs to be working about that right there instead of hiring somebody, to pay the parking. But my whole thing is, sir,
APAC can get that one too.
I'm being choosy, are you?
Don't cut a discount.
Okay. My whole thing is, and that's the best part of me being the chairman, I don't have to make a motion and I don't have to vote on this, okay? But I guess I've got concerns of my own. I understand that zoning is worked in a lot of other counties in the state, and I understand if you live in a municipality, you ain't got a choice in the matter, you're gonna be from. And I kind of sort of get, zoning is nothing no more than a planning and a program. I understand that too. With that being said, I'm glad I'm the chairman tonight. And God bless the commission.
And it's also, I do want to say that it's not meant to be set in stone. I think that, edits can be made before it gets to the board of commissioners. That's one thing, but also even after it gets approved, it's meant to kind of be revised periodically. If there's something that we come up against in development that thinks of something that we didn't think about, then it's the planning board and the board of commissioners prerogative to adjust it, make it appropriate. So,
And I understand, and like once again, I'm not saying yay or nay, up or down, left or right. I'm not saying that. I understand it's like Eric is just saying, is this the beginning of the snowball? I get this. Okay, what if we put in, what if the commissioners do decide that they're gonna do a gentle, light form of zoning? All right, personnel change, you've got turnaround all the time. All right. What's gonna happen when there is turnaround and this whole zoning issue gets in someone else's hands? Now all of a sudden they've got a whole different idea. And that's when your property, and it's my opinion, that's when I feel like that your property rights in the room. I'm all for being a good neighbor. I'm talking about me as a person. Take the chairman part out for right now. I'm all for being a good neighbor. it gets to the point that my neighbor 2 miles down the road has got actual more say on my property than I do, then he needs the tax bill. He needs that tax bill. Because I mean, and I will say this as a property owner, I know where every last one of my property irons is at. If you need something, if you ask me, I can assure you you're gonna get it. You show up out there and you start talking to me about what I got on my property, I got 2 words for you. And good morning, ain't it? I'm gonna point to the road for you one time. And you can grab your cell phone and call over here and have somebody come out, that's your protection. I'm in charge of my property. That's me. So I guess if you've done a great job. I have no concerns to.
Just as a brief clarification for parking on page 51 of the draft ordinance under 572B, we do allow that, it reads as parking areas shall be paved or covered with a dustless graded compacted surface, gravel pavers or et cetera.
So actually.
But Dave's telling me that parking area is more than his spaces shall be paved.
That's true, yeah. So.
And I guess now's the time to talk about it, because I can assure you, yes, Lake Grill's got more than 10 parking places.
Yeah, and it wouldn't, again, it would not affect initial businesses, it really more for new uses, new businesses. And, it could be scratched too, that's an option.
Okay, so I'm assuming what you're saying would be like grandfather clause then.
Yeah.
Okay, well, with that being said, then I need to put some language in there, it's gonna take care of Matt Tire, John Link truck in, and yesterday's grill, and that, what's that winery down the street? That's gotta be taken care of.
It's in the non-conformity section.
Well, if it's non-conforming, when they decide they're gonna add on to the wine tasting room, somebody's gonna have to come up with some course. I mean, that money's gotta come from somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I'm just, if I'm asking too many questions, I apologize for that. But at the same time, us as a planning board, I can't speak for the commissioners because they do a great job on their own. But us as a planning board, it's our responsibility. It's a balancing act. It's our responsibility to serve the citizens of Alamance County and give our best recommendation we possibly can to the county commission. That's our purpose for being here. So that's all I'm gonna say about that. I'm gonna step back and let everybody else, jump in and discuss. I've been spoken my piece.
So my comment is exactly the same as when we started this. If you ain't gonna do the whole county, don't start. Because I'm in McCray. And come out there and see how much trees have been pushed down for houses. And I can't complain about it because I didn't have $300,000 to buy the land. So I gotta put up. But I don't want to restrict that man that sold that land, that put that money in his pocket, because they've been sitting on it, because that was Gant land, and they've been sitting on that.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
100 years. So they can do what they want to do.
Well, they just there, go to those animal curry road, I told you, the same thing.
Yep. And, that's when we started this, it came to us in all these different big pieces of property. And I asked how many were in the northern part of the county that went away. And nobody can answer the question. I mean, because y'all didn't track it. It's not that you didn't want to, y'all didn't track it. I mean, me personally, and I'll make a motion. I make a motion, we scrap this and don't recommend it to the county commission.
Second.
As the old saying goes, now everybody can, get off the pump. And I apologize. I was going to agree with you. No. What do you think? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move to table it.
Too much discussion.
Well, we got a first and a second, and we're not going to vote. Now we got a first and second to take. So which one overrides?
You got to vote on the table.
That's right.
And as a matter of fact, the 2/3 majority to do anything with it. So you either not vote or vote against it. Now, get yours back in.
So your table overrides my motion.
Mr. Carr, you have a council online with you.
Mr. Campbell, you care to help us out there, please?
Yes, sir. I believe we need to hear the first motion that has been on the table first before we move on to another. We can have open discussion about this motion that's on the table, but I believe we need to resolve this one before we move forward.
Okay.
Send my motion.
All right, so we have, repeat yourself.
I make a motion, we scrap this and do not recommend it, sending it to the county commission.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
And then take roll call.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. And if we can have the individuals on Zoom, please individually identify themselves and vote.
Mr. Chair. Ask people before we vote.
Well, not me. You might want to confer with the lawyer on this.
Mr. Campbell, we got a motion and a second. I don't call for a vote, but we've got a member up here who wants to make a comment. I don't think he heard. Mr. Campbell?
His name is Scott. His last name is Scott.
Scott?
Yes, sir.
All right, we got a motion and a second. I've already called for a vote. We have a member who wants to ask a question.
Okay.
So, put me in the right spot there, please.
Can you say that one more time? Sorry, I can't understand you.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. I've already asked for a vote. We have a member who wants to ask a question first.
I believe that could be permissible. As I said, we could have a discussion on the vote just to see what others think about it.
Okay, Mr. Poe?
Okay, so, yes, spent a year talking about this thing. A lot of public comment, maybe not enough. All right, so yes, there is this proposal, maybe, like I said earlier, maybe too restrictive, maybe we're not done massaging it yet. But don't throw the baby out with bathwater for the target areas that were the initial discussion. Yes, there's a lot of details that I don't like. Believe me, when the first draft, and I said it before, I would have never voted for anything like what came through the first draft. I really feel that before you just throw out the work that has been done by the planning department, planning board, the steering committee, all the community engagement, without thoroughly vetting this. And this is not even giving them the opportunity for the commissioners to hear it at all. If we just scrap it right now, and that's $60,000 in a year and a half's worth of work. If not. Y'all be aware of that. Yes, target areas for heavy industry, large scale commercial, large scale residential, not small scale stuff, not home based business. It's very in support of all home based businesses. If it's a problem like with something that would happen to Eric or John Link, yeah, you take that out. Keep in mind what the target is. Each individual play on a drive, pass play, incomplete, pass play, incomplete, run up the middle. What's the goal? Goal is the touchdown and to win the game. All right. Discuss very many ways how to get there to that end zone. I'm only one guy, and I've been on the fence with it, but if we're not done, then that's not something to just throw it. Okay.
Yes.
I've listened to it. We've not, for the longest time, heard a lot of things from Snow Camp, from residents of Snow Camp. The entire group. We've heard a lot from one side tonight. We've heard a lot from the other side. There are a lot of things in this document that addresses growth and addresses certain kinds of growth, certain things. There's a lot of things in it that don't impact certain things. Ag land is protected. Ag uses are protected by state law and within this document. The question I've got is, the HIDO will protect the whole county. It's a new hideout. If it had been the way prior to the mine being approved, if the hideout we have in place now had been there, we probably wouldn't be sitting here tonight talking about this, more than likely. But you can't govern looking in the rearview mirror. You can't. My question though is if this goes away and if we don't address the issues, we've got pressures from all over. If you look at the zoning map of North Carolina with counties that have countywide zoning, counties that have partial county zoning, counties that don't have it. There's one county in the middle of the state, it's that color, you know, it looks like a big light glowing in the dark because we don't have any kind of plan. My concern or my question would be this: if this doesn't happen, Randolph County is gonna happen. The Toyota people are coming. They're gonna build their building. That industry is gonna be there. It's just a short distance from Snow Camp to that site. There will be, as the man from South Carolina, from Mr. Schaefer said, there will be supporting industries that'll come. And they're gonna look for available land that is cheap. And they're gonna look for tax incentives, and they're gonna look for things that, you know, will help them locate in places that are advantageous to them. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that that is Snow Camp. It's just, that's the open space, it's the closest area to them. You know, they're gonna look for wherever they can. If we don't have some kind of a plan, what are you people, what are we people, what is gonna be what's gonna happen in this board, in this body, you know, 6 months down the road, a year from now, when people come and say, these industries are locating, you know, in our area and we don't like it. And they're not gonna be class 3s. They're not gonna be class 3 heavy industrial things. They're gonna be large scale manufacturing or large scale warehouse type facilities. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but they will not necessarily be regulated by the HIDO that is in place today. But with some kind of plan, you can at least have some eyes looking at it and decide, does it fit the footprint of Snow Camp? Does it meet the standard of the community? Does it work? That's all I'm saying. I'm just concerned for what happens along the way.
Oh, thanks, sir.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask a question?
You ask on what you want to, please. Well,
I'd like to ask legal counsel, if it's voted down tonight, could this board, the planning board, not bring it up at a future date again?
Sir, Scott,
Yes, sir.
before you answer that, can we have a 5-minute recess, please? Please.
It's
your chair.
We gotta have 5 minutes.
I got a motion, get a second on that.
Thanks, sir. Let's do it.
We all can do that.
All right. Let's get back to the regular order. Thank you very much. I believe you asked a question, Attorney.
No,
Okay.
I'm finished.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bailey asked the question of our council. Sir, would you state that question one more time, please?
My question was, if they vote it down tonight, can they at a later point, if the planning board decides to do so as a majority, can they bring it up in the future, 6 months later, a year later, 10 years later?
I believe they could. I mean, it's always on the table, but it would just have to be a new business and essentially starting over where we left off. I don't believe that the board today can bind future boards down the road if the public opinion changes at all.
And that was the point of the question.
Historically, we don't vote stuff down for prejudice,
Yeah.
so it could come up again. That was a lawyer joke.
I call it.
Okay.
Mr. Scott, if you would explain that you are with the T. Campbell firm, but your last name is Scott, correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct. I apologize. We have multiple Zoom accounts, which is why you see T. Campbell probably written at the bottom, but my name is Patrick Scott.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, awesome. Mr. Bailey.
This is my first meeting. There's been a whole lot of work gone into this. I have looked for part of it. And I've heard things here tonight that, I don't think if Eric has his business and he has 10 parking spaces, I don't think he should pay his lot. For me personally, I don't think I could vote to scrap it tonight because I ain't really looked at it enough to know. And a whole lot of work gone into it.
Thank you, sir.
And I do have one thing. I apologize, but I did get some clarification, and the motion to table the vote does supersede the motion that was on the table as it was.
I have since rescinded that motion.
Okay, thank you, sir. Just wanted clarification.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is it okay for me to ask a question?
It is.
We spoke a lot about the existing businesses. What I haven't heard about was the future Eric McPherson's. I'm sure there's plenty of entrepreneurs in our area that want to start a business. And it seems, and nothing, I have concerns for everybody. Obviously the existing businesses as they sit. What about the future business? Are they going to be so restricted? Maybe the next Eric McPherson doesn't come about.
I put myself, Chris, I put myself, if I was doing what I did 10 years ago today, or 2 years from now, what does that look like?
Well, another personal opinion. Based on the financial climate that's going on in this country now, things are changing. Okay, things are changing. Regardless of whether you're pro-zoning or anti-zoning. Okay. Once we decide that you're on need a logistics company from one place to the other, whether it's a track backhoe or whether it's a load grocery, you gotta have it. And I think somebody said earlier in this meeting that every once in a while somebody wants to put some stone on the driveway. And the one thing that I promise you, don't make no difference which side of the aisle you're on. If you're riding down the road, you get a pothole, I go ahead and promise you right now, you are in question as to whether or not you're gonna be seen in the ground. So it's back to that balancing act I was talking about. Things are changing. Some people like change, some people don't. me personally, when you have an established business, I understand what you're saying about future business. You have an established business that a particular ordinance or zoning classification or something has a negative impact on that person. Sir, how long have you been in the tire business? A while.
20 years and like
20 years in business. And it's like I was saying earlier. If he's been in business for 20 years, he's made it this far. He's made it past the, you're lucky if you make it to this point phase. I've been past this time. I've been past Eric's shop a million times. It's a well-run facility. Just because it's a well-run facility doesn't mean he should have to be the one on the chopping block because of somebody's idea, because their mushroom garden didn't do too well. It comes right back to what I said earlier. We have our planning in place. We have 5 duly elected county commissioners that are doing a great job. But what's gonna happen 10 years from now when it's changed? What's gonna happen when we hire somebody to come in here from a different county that's already had zoning in place? And it's to the point that you can't even as much as put your bicycle outside your door. Okay? I've worked all over this state, and I've worked in places that have zoning and places that don't have zoning. Some places it applies, some places it does not apply. I'm not saying either way in this particular situation. Like I said, I'm so glad, I am so glad I'm chairman. That's my biggest concern. I feel what you're saying as far as future business, because I'm sure somewhere right now, there's a little boy that's took his shower, went to bed, is in school, he's gonna graduate. One day, he's gonna want to run a tire store. He wants to have an auto repair center. Or maybe he's got an aspiration to own trucks, or maybe he wants to start a dairy farm or something. That would be crazy, but I'm just saying. All right. So for us to I'm not saying that the average homeowner doesn't matter, but I'm saying I'm pro business. I will come out the gate and say I am pro business.
Can we run through that scenario? If say I wanted to open up a competitive tire store down there, piece of property, say on the other side.
cut your deal on them.
What is that process? I find, and it could be a piece of ground there somewhere, across the road from Eric. Billy Bob Steyer, he wants to go into business. What is the process? If it's zone agriculture,
Yeah.
then what is the process? What do I do?
Well, I mean, like I said, there's pretty generous provisions in there for home-based businesses. So if it's an auto service or something like that, you have 3 acres, you have up to 6 employees, and a building, accessory building up to 6,000 square foot. If you outgrew that, I don't know how big your building is. It's not, but if you wanted to, get a bigger building, then you would have to rezone property, and it could be that property or another property down the road. But one thing I will say is, we would come before planning board, and they would probably, approve it, or
Recommend it.
recommend it, yeah, recommend it. I mean, and that's the process now for a lot of certain uses. So it leans, the process really sets a decision-making framework, but it leans on this planning board, leans on the board of commissioners to really, approve things that are appropriate. And largely, they've been very supportive of the business in the past. And there are some approvals that come before them. So it kind of leans on them to do that.
So I would take my plan, and say, hey, I got this piece of property, I want to do business. I would go to Tommy. And I said, well, it's agriculture. So what's the process if I want to change it? There's nothing
So you
on it.
don't have to have plans to start with. You come to me and say, hey, I like this zoning district, unless you're doing what would be conditional zoning, pick specifically where you want to hold in. You just think something in that district sounds good. You come to me and say, I have this piece of land, it's 6 acres, I'm applying for rezoning, we pay me, we do the paperwork, we get to the boards. And they're very straightforward legal decisions by state law, that it's more of an opinion when you do a straight rezoning. Does it feel good? Does it look good? Does it do what we want to do? Yes. As opposed to some of the other choices, special use permits and stuff, you have a whole lot more guidance by state law that gives the board just a few options of how to make that decision.
So it's not going to prevent me from starting a business.
No, like I said, I don't need your plans. You don't need to have any kind of investment in something.
I just have to ask and have reason.
Yes. Now, even if I've experienced where somebody hasn't bought it yet, right? Because I want to know that I can do that there before I spend the money. So you can have current owners let you speak on behalf of it, that kind of thing. So it's not that you even currently have to own it. Somebody else can own it and you could be working through them to get to that.
So the onus of getting zoning is not on the current landowner. It's on the prospective builder or business person or developer.
Depends on the agreement they work out. So I'm just saying, if you don't have to buy it and hope that it works out, you can put that in part of your contract when you're purchasing and say, you know, we're doing this and I'm only buying it if it goes this way.
And, you know, a home-based business, rural home-based business will not require rezoning. Require an ordinance compliance permit. Say, I'm gonna have a trucking business, but I'm only gonna, you know, have, you know, this many trucks, this many employees, and I have 3 acres. Simple process. But if you're gonna expand, you know, bigger, then you have to go to the rezoning.
Can I say something? Okay, to ask a question?
Right.
Sir.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Sure, Mr. Lee.
Okay, you know, I think I kind of have to agree with Bill that throw this whole thing out. What doesn't concern me is whether Eric has his parking lot paved. I do business at Eric's, and I don't mind driving over the gravel. I think the thing that Mr. Willoughby brought up is what we need to be paying attention to. At the state appeal hearing for the mine, under oath, the developers of that mine said they picked Alamance County because we have no zoning. And what's coming in here is not the guy's home business owner, it's Toyota, it's the suppliers that are coming in there. And if there's no plan for those kinds of businesses, large commercial businesses, potential asphalt farms, paper mills, I don't know if you ever lived near a paper mill, but that's one of the worst things in the world. If we don't have a plan for that, they're just gonna come. And you talked about the HIDO. The way the HIDO is written now, if you check off all the boxes, I don't care if we bring every person in snow camp to that public hearing. If they check off all the boxes in the thing, the commissioners have no say, they have to approve that plan. And that seems to me to just go against common sense.
So my common sense is, if I had 100 acres and somebody from Toyota wanted to come up here and build a warehouse on my property and give me $10 million, it ain't nobody blankety blank business. But mine.
Except I'm your neighbor.
Yeah, I'm your neighbor.
I know, I'm right next door. I mean.
I'm with you there, but now I am gonna point this out. Alamance County did not get Toyota.
No, I understand that. I understand
Because I
that.
also remember earlier there was some discussion about South Carolina wound up BMW. Is that you, sir?
Yeah.
Okay, I do remember, Gene, you're gonna have to help me with this one. I remember it's been several years ago. I want to say it was Mercedes was gonna be building a plant down in Memphis. Am I right?
Arrowhead Golf Course.
Okay, so they was gonna build a plant down there, but they went, I think they went to Alabama, right? Alabama is wishing like all get out right now. They'd built that plant at Arrowhead Golf Course. It ain't got nothing to do with the traffic going down the highway. It ain't got nothing to do with somebody complaining because their burrito got overcooked in the microwave at Quickie Mart. It's got everything to do with the tax incentives that was given to them to come there because Alabama wanted it so bad. I'm with you. I fully understand what you're saying about Toyota. Toyota is going to Randolph County. The mega site is happening down there, okay? There's, we can go down there and jump straight up and down and get our pickets and our magic markers out and we can say, no more mega site. It's coming. It's coming. Point blank, it's gonna happen.
And that's my point. is
Okay.
Unless we have some reason to plan for it.
And that's the whole idea. And I guess what I'm gonna say, hopefully, if I'm right, I don't know that this issue is done yet.
Let's take all this other stuff off the table and say, what are the threats to the county? And to me, the threats are
unplanned growth in the large commercial or heavy industry areas.
And we got high note for that right there, and I can go ahead and say this because I just feel natural fact, I think 60+ ordinances on the books for the planning department concerning Alamance County right now. So it ain't just as simple as somebody coming over here and decide if they want to build a nuclear waste dump in the county, because I can go ahead and tell you right now, there's an ordinance to go.
To that point, Ray.
With that being said, I'm sorry, Bill, but with that being said, there is a ordinance, except there's no ability to say no. If they're technically correct, they're technically done, there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Right, that's the biggest reason that rock where it came in the first place.
So, I mean, we did change the height though, and we've got notices and stuff, and Bill and all y'all did a great job on that. But short of having zoning, you don't have the ability to say no.
And if we're gonna keep building schools and everything else for all the people that are living here in houses, we better have some industrial to pay for as a tax base. So,
Because the alternative is every house has got to pay enough tax to run the county. If you don't have any industrial tax.
Mr. Chairman, you open the floor. Can I say something? He just made a valid point. You're gonna put it on the homeowner again, and I'm not stepping on nobody's toes, but there's an elephant in this room and nobody's talking about it. The elephant is, these poor guys that got the mobile home park, the elephant is, you're gonna triple the size of the lot for per person. Then he just said they gonna have to pay more taxes because we're gonna block all the industry. Look, common sense ain't so common no more. It ain't no common sense being talked to here tonight. Y'all need to table this for, you know, you put where you messed up, Steve made the call this. You put too many things on one ticket. You know, you got the heavy industrial, then you put all this other stuff with it. That ain't gonna fly.
Right, I agree.
Mr. Chairman, you have a motion and a second on the table.
Yes, sir, but I got Mr. Carter over here. I definitely want to hear what he's got to say.
I was on the board that authorized this.
Yes, sir.
Our concern at that time was what we dealt with. That started out with snow camp. Now, I just told Jake a few minutes ago, if I had had any idea, and I guarantee you, like Bill had to leave, Bill is daddy, and had any idea that we'd be seeing some of the stuff that's in there, it never would have gotten started. I've been all over this county since, I have to say, since I've been a commissioner, I've been all over this county. Before I up and down it sometimes, but I've been in farms, I've been on mile-long driveways that were nothing but gravel. Some of them were just dirt. And people in Alamance County don't care whether you got space for 10 cars to park and it's gravel or whether it's paved. They want to get their car fixed, or they need to park a truck or something like that, they don't care. Orange County might be different, Guilford County might be different. I don't even think Randolph County's there yet, but they might be. But we didn't have any idea we'd be looking at what we're looking at right now. Started this thing, and
one thing I will say about parking is, you know, that's one thing that's not in this ordinance. There are no parking requirements in this ordinance. If you go to any other ordinance, any county ordinance or city ordinance or town ordinance, there will be a whole chapter on parking requirements. And we didn't put that in this. So, because we didn't think it was, you know, necessary.
And we need to know, I've talked to Steve, I've talked to a bunch of people in here. We need to know where the struggle points are. We've taken this through public, we've taken this through a steering committee, and we've heard some things, but if there's more to hear and there's more points that we just don't care enough to really be concerned with regulating, let's take a minute.
Yeah.
That's what we're here to discuss and what we've been trying to discuss. We are where we are, and we'd like to see what else is there or what else everybody has to say with detail. So the big picture stuff is great, but detail is what will make this be what it needs to be if that's what we want to do.
And we did, you know, we were kind of under a deadline, try to get, you know, this thing done by March, because that's when the moratorium.
February
comes up.
28th.
But if it takes longer than that, it takes longer.
Patrick, can you help us with the moratorium? I know that we had some questions today about that. Its expiration, what that means, or what we could do.
Yes, the moratorium can be extended under the statute. However, there would have to be additional facts and circumstances that have been come up that were not available at the time the moratorium was placed before it can be extended for a reasonable period of time.
How could we make that, or what standing would we have, since we've had it for a year, what standing would we have for explanation to even entertain that?
Can you ask that one more time?
What could we do, what, from what you just read out, what Alamance County's standards or what we have come along this last year, how could we word something that would even allow and meet those guidelines to do any kind of extension for the moratorium?
We can look into it. There are several different factors that must be met. First is that the local government must show that it has taken all reasonable and feasible steps proposed to be taken in its ordinance establishing the moratorium to address the problems and conditions leading to the imposition of the moratorium. And then also, as I said, that you also need to establish new facts and conditions that warrant an extension. I believe the county here can show that it has taken all reasonable and feasible steps to address the issues within the moratorium, given all the public hearings, public discussion, and all that. New facts and conditions that could warrant an extension, that is up for debate. We, of course, has been addressed by the board several times tonight that the opposition of this ordinance is relatively recent, to my knowledge. So we can take that into effect and into consideration and trying to figure out, okay, do we actually, based on the public opinion heard tonight, need to extend this to make sure that we get it done the right way?
Thank you, Patrick.
All right, so at this time, we've got a motion and a second on the board. All those in favor of Gene's motion signify as aye.
But the ones that are on Zoom have to say their name and their vote.
You want to take care of that for me, please?
Sure.
Please.
Sandy, we need, or you need to do a roll call, call out the individuals on.
What's the motion? Scrap it and do not send it to
Ellington Graves. Oh, am I supposed to go now? Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
Ellington Graves, aye.
Deborah Hyder. I think she done went to the house.
Oh, sorry. Steven.
Stephen Dodson.
Am I allowed to vote without video?
You should be able to, yes, sir.
Okay, Stephen Dotson, aye.
Yeah, yeah.
Roll call vote. Bill Pope? No. No.
Nope.
No.
Hold on, I'm right back.
It is,
It's a dead tie.
it's dead time.
The chairman has to vote.
I don't want, Ray, don't do that yet. Patrick, I had Deborah Hyder here earlier, but I don't have her here now. How do we consider her vote?
She is not present for the vote. She is not counted.
She's not present, not counted. Okay.
That is my understanding of the remote law, that the absentee does not vote for aye anymore if they are remote.
Okay. So it stands 5-5.
I opened my big mouth while I gave that.
You just-
About counting chickens before.
Okay, motion failed, so.
What's next?
Ronnie, did you want to represent yours?
You mean the one to adjourn?
No. I didn't hear that one, to be honest, but, no, the table one, he had said.
Well, we don't have a motion to table now.
I didn't know if you want to redo that one, okay.
So, in my opinion, we understand far better now what needs to happen. And right, in my opinion, rather than taking the time and the money that have been expended on this to this point, we need to come back to, okay. When Ray excused himself a while ago, I talked to Mr. Payson. And we've got a deadline that has been very diligently worked against. But that deadline is not hard enough to take this document in the condition it's in today and send it on to see what happens. So what I think needs to happen is the planning board needs to work on this some more, have some more conversation, get this manipulated to a point, notify the public, come up here, here's what we got, have more conversation, and get everybody as close to happy as we can, understanding that not everybody's gonna be totally happy, but we can get closer. And then send it to the commissioners, and they feel good about taking some action on it and go from there. And hopefully we can get this done before Randolph County or Chatham County or whatever comes loose at the seams and spills over on us. Because if that happens, it ain't gonna be gravy that we find slopping around on our taters. Just saying. Now you want that motion to adjourn?
That's up to Mr. Cobb.
No, wait a minute, we still ain't done nothing other than just talking about it. Ain't been no vote bringing this back up later on talking.
Got nothing to vote on.
Okay, fine.
We just voted down the motion, so there's
Okay.
nothing to take.
All right. That's correct. I ain't disagreeing with nobody.
The legal counsel told you that I was right to start with when I said I stayed with our.
Well, then go take the bar exam and do something.
Do you, Tanya, from a staff perspective, do you think we need to take some official action on this tonight?
I'd just like to hear from the board. Do you want to bring this back up on the February agenda? That kind of thing. I don't need a motion. I just need to hear what you want.
Okay.
Or if they instruct us to meet with the steering committee one more time, we'll talk through, the sticking points. That would be it.
Okay.
Then what about, you mentioned, you talked about the moratorium on, so what happens with that? Is that something we talk about
Commissioners have
now?
to take that up.
That's something you talked about.
They enabled it back last year, so they have to take it up for any continued review. They just now have the information from Patrick, and I think that was something we heard some of, so that's why I want to hear at this meeting too.
I think we'd like to have a recommendation from the planning board as to whether to extend it or not. And I certainly want Mr. Scott to give us legal advice or someone from that firm.
Mr. Scott, what do you feel like would be a reasonable time to extend this moratorium that's in question right now? Reasonable amount of time now.
You just quoted the statute yourself. It is the extension has to be reasonable. Of course, that is given all the circumstances available. I believe 3 months is very reasonable to get this thing done. All the boards to be pressed and not hurried to do so, but would definitely be motivated to get it done in that time frame and to make sure that it is not put on the back burner.
All right, so 3 months would give us as a planning board, would give us 2 months because the commissioners still have to have time to take a look, see at it. Is that right?
What's the deadline on the moratorium now?
February 28th.
And we cannot, by the way, take it up at next Tuesday's meeting. We've already got the agenda set for that meeting. So it'd be the first or third Monday in February.
And
We
it
need to
has,
take it up.
it has the advertisement required that a lot of other things do, so we put it in the paper.
But there's still time.
There's time.
Mr.
Your
Chairman,
second meeting is
Yes,
on the 20th.
I move we recommend the county commissioners extend this moratorium until May 31st, 2022.
Motion is second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Wait, roll call.
Ms.
Aye.
Ellington Graves,
Ellington Graves, aye.
Stephen Dodson,
Stephen Dodson, aye.
are we good? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
You ready for that?
Chairman, one moment. I believe we still have some new business on the table with the planning board calendar for 2022.
Didn't we address that earlier?
We did that earlier.
Did we? Okay,
Yes.
my apologies.
Everybody.
Let me also point out, the moratorium, current moratorium is going to expire by our second meeting in, I believe that's right. So we really
Right.
should take it up in our first meeting in February.
Okay.
And the advertising and so forth.
That's right. But your second meeting, I believe, is February 20th.
Which said it expires.
It expires the 28th, the very last day. Let's see. February 21st is your second meeting, so you would still be able to make a motion. 28th is our expiration date.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said 20.
Yes, sir.
And we're good.
So their question is, can we suspend this meeting tonight, come back next week and have some more conversation about this to give y'all clarity as to how to work while they're getting ready to extend this moratorium?
Patrick, we've done that before. From your perspective, would we be able to do that again?
I don't see a problem with that. As long as the moratorium is brought up with the board and they extend it that way.
Or 2 weeks. Will next Thursday night work?
It's not just.
Well, we got all here next Thursday.
What about Wednesday? What about next Wednesday? What about church night? You don't think it's important? I think it's plenty. If we get through by 8:45, we go home, watch Adrian Robbins.
I think you've been to church tonight.
Wednesday, will next Wednesday night work for you, 7 o'clock? June should.
I think so. I have to ask Ms. Graves.
Ms. Graves,
Yes, sir.
next Wednesday night work out all right with you?
That's the
Uh,
19th. Have you got anywhere to be the 19th?
I got a ball game, but I can make that work if everybody else can. I'm good.
You know, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a
Right.
Wednesday.
Mr. Dodson,
Yes, that'll be fine. Thank you.
I move we suspend this meeting till next Wednesday night, 19th, 7 o'clock.
All right.
I say.
All right. Before we get up and leave here, I'm asking very humbly. Ms. Thompson, Mr. Carter, will you folks be here next Wednesday? Yes. I'm sorry, I didn't hear. Will you be here next Wednesday night to visit with us?
I will.
Mr. Basil?
He didn't ask me.
But he got to be there.
He
I
has.
don't know that I really want to be here next Wednesday. All right,
Mr. Chair, I can't.
awesome. I'd love to see you. Ma'am,
You know, what you're doing is really hard. and when you got emotion involved in it, because change is a sister to fear. Sometimes we face that, anybody that's in a decision-making position. And probably when you volunteered for this, you had no idea the power that would be in it. And I'm just so thankful for everybody who called me last night and I said, come to this meeting because your voice matters and everybody's voice matters. That's how you figure things out, when you take the best and the worst of something and make it great by working and getting that balance. So I appreciate everybody in the room. These are not easy times for anything. And I just appreciate standing up because, you know, we're all millionaires doing all this. So.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure thing.
My thing is totally different than most of y'all's talk about what y'all passed last time. Is there anything we can do at the planning board level, or does it gotta go to these gentlemen over here?
I'm pretty sure, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, I'm pretty sure at this time, as long as it's been since we voted, I think it was last month we voted on it. I'm pretty sure by now that it's already gonna start making its way through the channels to the commissioners. And I'm pretty sure of that.
It comes to y'all folks.
And please understand, it's kind of sort of been counterproductive. If we did vote on something to send to the commissioners, and in the process of it going from us to the commissioners, if we called it back, said, hold up, put it reverse, go back, we did this, which a little bit, I mean, if that right there, if we done stuff of that nature, nothing would ever get done.
I would agree with that, but
Well,
I
either
see
way-
what you're saying. I
Either
understand what you're
way,
saying.
it not being disrespectful at all, that ordinance is on its way to the commissioners. And I can say, I would say this, if none of the three of you folks was here. We've got 5 county commissioners that have just as much passion about this county as the people that live here. They doing it for more than measly little. They love the county too, sir. They would be there.
I'm just understanding the process.
There you go.
Sandy would like to ask a question. Sandy would like to.
Miss Sandy?
Thank you, Ian. Next, when we suspend the meeting and move it to Wednesday, will there be public comments again?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Will you be here in person or are you gonna be on the Zoom link again?
I'll be out of lockdown next week, so I'll be in person.
Okay. Well, we hope to see you. How about that?
Sounds good. I didn't know if the public is able to come in and make comments if they weren't able to come tonight.
Hey,
We have public comment.
yeah, we'll have public comments. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, but that's right, we are adjourned.
Okay, I thought we had already
I got first and second, it sounds
All right, we
good.
got a motion to second on the table. Do I need to take a roll call again?
You already done them on the screen.
All right, so all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Same still working.